It is time to go live, going live. Oh, and I got a big fat cat right here to keep me company on this live stream. Carmela, what are you doing in here? Yeah, oh, the kitty is here. Well, that's one way to start a live stream, having you barge in. Say, yep, all right. Well, hello, Arts. Welcome. And to everyone else who's here, welcome to. Say, tonight is going to be a fun night because battle analysis. This is one thing I've said I would do for a while, but time kept on getting away from me. So I'm like, you know what? We're just going to bite the bullet. We're going to make a live stream of this. We are going to analyze properly, not just in simply, here's a review. No, we are going to break down the final fight from Murder Drones between Uzi and Sin. We are going to break down the fight between Momo Okarun and Ira versus the Loch Ness Monster. And because the most recent video about the Titan did so well, let's actually break down that particular fight, because in that video I just focused more on the Titan and what the Titan represents rather than just what Toby actually delivered to us with a multi-staged fight and what that says about the story, because there was a lot of development that was happening in that particular fight that I think would be a lot of fun to get into. And Terrence Scott is here as well. Hey, woo, excellent. Okay. And for anyone who suddenly pops on in who's never been with us before, then hi. Say, we got a lot of new subscribers recently, and hopefully they drop in and see what things are like here for a live stream. Fortunately, it looks like it'll probably just be me tonight, not the whole harem. But while we were together as a group, we did a video with Dr. Pepper, and the hope and the dream is that you guys will get to see that pretty soon. What kind of shenanigans we got up to with there. Terrence Scott said, I'm here with my Sin plush. Hey, awesome. Let's see here. All of my plushies for Murder Drones are actually in the closet across from me. Even if I had them on out, you guys couldn't see it because I don't have a camera. Dr. Pepper and the multiverse variants. Yep, that was pretty much it. The time was an SOB in that fight. But you expect that for a mid-game final boss. And professional water coolers here. Oh man, professional water cooler. You made me so uncomfortable while fighting against you multiple times. That was a crazy fight. I don't know why. It was, but it was just like, water cooler. No. Terrence says my Crow Uzi plush is my closest for undisclosed reasons. Okay. I actually ended up accidentally getting two, and so I gave one to one of my friends, and I was like, you're into crows? Here, have a crow. Or it says, dang, only Toby could make a water cooler scary. Yeah. Next time I see a water cooler, and be all like, what are you going to do to me? So, not only are we going to be talking about various fights tonight, but also I think it'd be fun to talk about some of my burgeoning theories for Deltarune after having gone through the game. And I am playing through it again, especially for those people who are wondering when the next Cruzy video is coming out. I will make that happen once I've gone through both chapters again, and have also then done my breakdowns of chapters 3 and 4 separately. Because while people are kind of smushing them together and talking about them as one entity, I think it's important to split the two, because each chapter is telling a very different part of the story with a very different central message. Oh, the honey fat cat trying to distract me by attacking my knee in the most loving way possible. All right. Well, let's just start diving into this, and just get to the fun, get to the meat of the matter. So, our lesson for tonight: writing great fights. Now then, obviously we will be able to assess as we go through these fights which ones are actually great, which ones are maybe a little bit meh. We'll find out. And that being said, our goals: review what it takes to write a good fight in any story, and then we're going to be breaking down and analyzing the following fights: Momo versus the Loch Ness Monster, Uzi versus Sin, and the Fun Gang versus the Titan. And I think that we will do it in that particular order. Tyler Goodman asks, are you going to check out the Amazing Digital Circus episode 5? Tyler, the answer is yes. I have an entire script written up for that episode, and I just need to record it. I've been pretty busy this last week, which is why I haven't had the chance to really dive into it just yet, especially because I'm trying to get one of the drafts done for my book, Imagination's Veil, by the end of the month, so that way I can then shift gears and get into the last book for the Legend of the Ten Lords and work on that series' next draft. I've got it all planned out, so that way I can get all of these books published within the next 3 years. And that is the goal. But coming back to the Amazing Digital Circus episode 5, yes, I have seen it. I have loved it. I have written up the script for it. I am going to have a ton of fun recording and editing that thing together. And later on in this live stream, if you guys wish, we can even talk a little bit about it and just reminisce about the insanity that was in this latest episode and the heart that it brought as well. There was a lot going on. And Terrence says, Sin protects me from the eldritch demons that live in my wallas. Oh, in your walls. Okay. It's like in the wallas. Walla Walla, Washington? Or are we talking about like wombats have evolved? Okay. Demons that live in the walls. And some houses, yeah, that is just a feature of the home. Now then, there were some of you who were around for my lesson on what I think helps us make a good fight that was done 3 months ago. So I know it's been 3 months, but for anyone who was there for that particular lesson, sound off in the chat. What does it take to make a great fight? Or at least can you remember what I said makes a great fight? So I'll give you guys a moment to sound off. You can write something, for instance, all like, you need witty banter. As an example, that's not anything that I said in that lesson 3 months ago. But let's see what you guys remember. Art says, are you going to comment on the Fun Gang versus the Knight first battle at one time? I'm curious to know your opinion on that. So, Arts, when I fight the Knight the next time, so going back to chapter 3, my intention is to have the Shadow Mantle for when I go into that fight, so that way I can experience the exquisite pain of going through that particular boss fight in more than just 2 hits. Oh boy. But as far as my initial thoughts on it go, wow. What a standoff. And just like Shade, as just kind of like a quick aside, I think this is one of the reasons why people have kind of really downplayed talking about the Titan. Why everyone's talking about the Knight. And I get it. The Knight is one of the big villains of the entire story. So, of course, people want to talk about the Knight. I get it. But the Titan represents so much. The thing, though, is this. We defeat the Titan at the end of chapter 4. The Titan, and being that Ralze says should be invincible to us, we managed to beat. Hallelujah. And the problem is that once you defeat an enemy within any story, it's really hard to reestablish just how dangerous that enemy is. Unless, for instance, you show that the enemy wasn't even trying, or this is just the preliminary battle, this was just a probing attack that you barely managed to survive, the enemy's got way more still way more in reserve, so they can just hurl at you. You haven't even scratched the surface yet. When you go up against an enemy like that, even if the good guys win, you can then preserve some of that terror, some of that anxiety, some of that anticipation. However, for the Titan, because the Titan gets beaten by the end of chapter 4 pretty thoroughly, and the day is saved to an extent, it's really hard, I think, to go back and be like, oh man, the Titan is just, when we go up against another Titan again, it's going to be so miserable. No, we've already beaten a Titan. So it's like, okay, when the next Titan comes, we're going to beat it. But the Knight, we haven't beaten the Knight yet. And because the Knight has already owned us once, depending on how you play, you either get beaten or you're able to play it to a standstill, you haven't actually defeated the Knight. And because we don't yet know the full plan that the Knight is undertaking, it makes the Knight just this unknown entity, this unknown player in the story that is still horrifying and unbeaten. So it's like, the Knight just scares me. When we go up against the Knight again, I hope I'm ready. But against the Titan, it's like, I've already beaten the Titan. Yeah, sure, it might get harder. If they put 2 or 3 more Titans against me, yeah, it's going to be a hard fight. But I've already beaten the Titan. And that's actually, and you can take that same mentality, and you can even put it over to something like The Force Awakens, leading into The Last Jedi. One of the big problems with Kylo Ren throughout the sequel trilogy is not that he wasn't a compelling character. Kylo Ren, I would argue, is the best aspect of the sequel trilogy from all 3 movies. He's a very interesting character. The problem is that he's not a very convincing or terrifying villain. He's engaging as a person, but not as a villain. Why? Because he got beaten by Rey. Rey, who had no training with the lightsaber. Rey, who's just swinging around that lightsaber like a baseball bat, no idea what she's doing, and somehow manages to beat him. Matches him in terms of the Force. And when we're introduced to him, he is intimidating. He's powerful. He's doing things with the Force that we have never seen before in the Star Wars movies. And then he gets beaten by a nobody? After that, it's kind of hard to take Kylo Ren seriously as a threat within the story. And that's, again, a huge problem when it comes to having kind of reoccurring or long-standing villains. You need to let the villains win at some point, or they need to be able to fight the heroes to a standstill. And when the heroes manage to defeat the villain needs to rally back in some kind of way that shows again, like, okay, I understand now. I understand why that person is so terrifying, why they are the main villain. Got it now. Excuse me. Yeah, Master 98 says Mary Ray Sue. Yeah. And you know what? And I'm just going to say this. That's no fault of Daisy Ridley. I think she's a fine actress, and I would love to have seen her character developed even more in the movies. I honestly would. I don't implicitly hate Ray. I don't implicitly hate her character. The problem with her is that, again, she's just a Mary Sue, and Mary Sue's bend the logic of the story around them in order for them to come out on top, no matter what. And it just takes away from any character development that she could have, and it negates often a lot of the character development that other characters are going to have, which leads to the absolute tragedy of of Finn's character, because Finn was awesome. He was absolutely awesome in The Force Awakens. I don't care what people say. I love Finn's character. And then he just got absolutely neutered and destroyed. Ugh, such a shame. Tara, coming back to Terrence Scott says 2 words: intermission time. If any of you guys don't know that music, you gotta watch Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail. Art says, any good battle requires a lot of tension and personal stakes between the two parties on display. Very good. Like this, is this a battle that can be won? The fight versus the Titan represents that for me. Okay. And that's a very good point. What does a good fight need? Yeah, it requires tension. It requires personal stakes. How do we get those personal stakes? We're going to review that here in just a moment after I've caught up with what you guys have written right here. Tyler Goodman says there's also the new amazing Digital Circus merch video. I watched that this afternoon, and I had a good laugh. And there was a guy in the car right next to me because I was just in a parking lot. And I looked up from my phone. I was like, I turned, and there was this dad with his baby just like looking at me really concerned like. And I was like, hello? I kid you not. Hannah Heaven is here. Woohoo! Shade says, I mean the Titan was not born yet, and we use the power of Seal and Fountain to defeat him. We technically, if he's a Titan. Well, it was a Titan, just a very young, new Titan. Still very dangerous. And Shade says, the villain needs aura. I got to do that. Aura farming. Hannah says, intermission in Digital Circus was so good. Yeah, the intermission in the Amazing Digital Circus was fun. Stormcrow, hey, Stormcrow, great to have you here. Evening, sir. I've gone back and replayed Chapter 4 again, and I have to say, even though we never see Azrael and Des on screen, those two are the secret rock punks and Christian families. Yes. Okay. Save that for the theory time when we start talking theories for Deltarune. But I just got to say this. I absolutely, even though, let's just be very clear about this here, there is nothing in the game implicitly saying or outright stating that the two had a crush on each other. But dang it, I believe that those two were crushing on each other back before Des disappeared. I'm just saying. And there's definitely some connection between Rebels there. I don't think just between Des and Chris, but I think that there was also, I think that Azrael enjoyed the wild side of someone who didn't toe the religious line like he did. Such a naughty boy. And it says, I'm pretty sure they were flirting and teasing. Oh, yes, I agree with that. Terrence Scott says, I felt like I was on drugs watching the intermission. I would not recommend tripping while watching the intermission part. I enjoyed the intermission. I thought that was just the animators having real fun while also hiding a really sad Easter egg in there. Art says, personal stakes are built up over time. We had 4 chapters to get to know these characters, to learn of their pain, their happiness, and what they stand to lose. If the Titan wins, we lose. Very good. Art says, Chris rather embraced the dark side willingly, so them being a double agent is entirely within character to me, and I agree. Shade says, now every Digital Circus video about the puppets were correct. Stormcrow, Lars, there was an explosion of Desrael fan art ever since Chapter 4 came out, and you know for a fact that Azrael's the kind of Christian that confesses to having naughty thoughts, but doesn't stop. Say, I have a fanfic that I need to write for Azrael in Deltarune that I've been wanting to do for a while now, and that will be funny. That will be funny to release. Shade says, I mean, we need to think about it. It's not like other RPGs. We don't have our main character with development, other characters, as focusing more about other characters. Yes, well, here's the thing. Deltarune gives a lot of great development for Chris as a character, but the game absolutely is more about characters like Suze and Ralze than about Chris, even though we control Chris. And I like the way that Toby Fox is handling that particular development. Now then, Arts, thank you for your answers in regard to this question. So what makes a good fight? And Shade also said the villain needs an aura. But if you're going to talk to me as an author and as someone who loves reading and watching good fight scenes and as someone who loves writing fight scenes, this is what I've learned. Each fight will be written differently based on the story itself. Jujutsu Kaisen is going to be very different from My Hero Academia, very different from Robin Hood, very different from Dandadan, very different from The Way of Kings, and you know what? All of those have great fights in them. If you try to be formulaic in your approach of my fight must have this, a fight must have this, and a fight must have this in order for it to be good, you're going to just create something that is a bland, formulaic iteration of someone else's better work. If anyone, and I do mean it, as I say here, anyone saying otherwise, in the words of the Dread Pirate Roberts, is just selling you something. Every fight will end up being unique if you adhere to the rules of your own story and your own world and characters. However, two critical elements that all well-written fights have are the setup and the payoff. When Arts brought up that there needs to be personal stakes, that is where the setup and the payoff come in. Because in the fight, and I've seen this so many times in various shonen anime, where like in the middle of the fight, one of the characters is like, I fight because of this reason. And yeah, cool. We have a contextualization of why this fight is happening, how it's happening, and who this character is. Brilliant. You like that. The problem is that you didn't set it up beforehand. And as a result, I don't really care. And the payoff can be super emotional, but it will always feel hollow because the setup wasn't properly there. A good example of where this actually worked out really well, because again, of the setup that went in, is going back to the big three with Bleach, Grimmjow, Jaggerjax versus Ichigo. There's tons of great emotional battles between the Soul Reapers and the Arrancar, but Grimmjow is always remembered the most because Grimmjow had so much setup. We learned so much about him before we have the big epic fight between him and Ichigo. And you get that emotional payoff of why these two are fighting. And then it resolves, and then we just jump into the next fight because it's Bleach. We have to jump into the next fight. No sticking around for any of the payoff. The payoff is super quick, but the setup was brilliant. CDVA is here. Hi, great to have you here. Stormcrow, Ezra, Father, forgive me. I imagine holding hands with Des Holiday last night. Des, so as you want to make out of my room tonight? Who cares if Mom's home? That makes it better. Yes, exactly. Now, the reason why we need to have the setup and the payoff is because they help to bookend the fight. They help to make the fight make sense. They help us to emotionally resonate and engage with the action. And if we don't have it, honestly, even if it's really, really cool, bombastic stuff, most people will ask themselves, why did I even bother? And here's something that I honestly want to ask you guys. Like, think about this for a moment. And I'm going to put this into the chat, and I want you guys to answer it. What fight is in fiction? Let's make clear. What fight in fiction is universally known by everyone? Why? Why do people remember that fight? And this was something that I asked myself the other day. I'm like, yeah. Fights that everyone knows. And as I was thinking about fights that I know really well, or that I know that a lot of other people know, I'm like, but wait a second. No, there's a lot of people who don't know about that fight. Oh. No, I can't put that one on the list. Art says Luke versus Vader in The Empire Strikes Back. That was one of my very first thoughts, and it might be one of the most easily recognizable. Terrence Scott says, I have no freaking idea. Yeah, Luke versus Vader is one of the few. Now, why? Why is Luke versus Vader one of the most well-known fights in all of fiction? Shade, I never have heard of the Monkey King versus the Buddha. That sounds epic. I have never heard of it. So, I'm fortunate to say, if other people know about the Monkey King versus the Buddha, you guys got to tell me more. But it's a fight that I've never heard about. And even for Luke versus Vader, you'll be surprised that more and more people these days don't know about that particular battle. Gilgamesh versus his boyfriend. Shade, people will only actually know the true story of Gilgamesh if they've bothered actually looking into it. Unfortunately, most people don't know the story of Gilgamesh, which is a shame. It's a crying shame. Like, if I bring up Gilgamesh, I get blank stares in the room, even from intelligent people. They're like, "What's that?" I'm like, "Oh no." Let's see here. CVA says that's a hard question. LOL. Avatar was big. Aang versus Firelord Ozai. That's a good one. That's a good one. The interesting thing is that I would almost ask, like, if you were to talk to Avatar fans, how many of them would start going to Aang versus the Fire Lord, in terms of like one of their biggest well-known battles. But that's, I think, actually a really good guess right there. Naruto versus Sasuke. In terms of anime fans, yes, everyone has heard about that, even if they haven't watched it or read it. Terrence Scott says, me being one of those people. Hey, you know what? That's okay. That is okay. Again, like, this is why it's a hard question. Because people are like, oh yeah, everyone knows this fight. Oh wait, you start asking people about it, and they're like, no, I don't know that one. So Master 98 says Luke is attempting to protect Han and Leia, realizing too late he was lured into a trap. And Art says it's the story twist, aka the payoff at the end. Yes. That is why Luke versus Vader resonates so well. Luke rushing in impetuously to save his friends because he felt them through the Force. He knows that they're hurting, and he thinks he's ready to save them, and he's not. And he loses to Vader. The good guy loses. And not only that, he loses his hand, and then he learns that Vader's his father? This kid is crushed at the end. People remember that because that shaped a generation, and it has reverberated ever since. One of the best twists in cinema. Yeah. And then as far as one of the ones I put out there, so like Aang versus Firelord Ozai, I would love to hear more people talk about it because that is a fun fight. And it's actually, when you take in Firelord Ozai and versus Aang, and Katara and Zuko versus Azula, and Sokka and Toph and Suki versus the air fleet, all at the same time, while Uncle Iroh is freeing Ba Sing Se. When you bring those four battles together into one greater story, it is chef's kiss beauty. The writers for Avatar: Last Airbender outdid themselves, and they've never been able to top it. Even the Dragon Prince season 3 with its amazing climax, and I would argue doesn't reach what they did with Avatar: The Last Airbender. Alibaba is known well as a character. I don't know about, though, in terms of fights. That's actually a good question right there. Art says, I'm going to do a fun one. Kevin McAllister versus the wet/sticky bandits. You know what? If we want to categorize that as an actual fight, yes. You say Home Alone, and people know it. I would also put out there Helm's Deep. Helm's Deep is probably better remembered than even the Siege of Minas Tirith from the movies, and even in terms of the books. I think in part because, like, especially in the books, the Siege of Minas Tirith is just, it is insane. It is mind-boggling. It is deep. And it just kind of leaves you like, oh, wow, what did I just read? But the Battle of Helm's Deep is engaging. It's fast. It's fun. It's brutal. It's great in the book, and it's great in the movies. And people continuously go back to Helm's Deep might just be the best large set piece battle ever done in cinema because it makes so much sense. It is so well executed, and it's just so much fun. And you've had an entire movie and a half to build up who Aragorn is, who Legolas is, who Gimli is, who Theoden is, what Saruman is after, why we should care about the people of Rohan, and this big epic fight in the gorge. Such good stuff. Helm's Deep is rather ingrained in me. Yes. Gojo versus King of Curses is a great fight, but is it universally known? I would argue no, because as much as Jujutsu Kaisen is very popular in certain circles, people like it, within the normie community, people have not been talking about Jujutsu Kaisen like since season 1, which is really weird. Like, I've not run into it unless I go looking for it. Stormcrow, George R. R. Martin versus procrastination. Yes, but remember, Stormcrow, I said in fiction. This is very much real. Great answer, though. But what I wanted to say, though, is that the fights that really, really stick out because, again, of the buildup and the payoff, not just the action in the middle of the fights. Not at all. Brother, I don't even know what community you're in. Oh, shade. You're talking to the guy who taught teenagers. Nerdy teenagers. You're talking to the guy that spends time with lots of younger folk. You're talking to the guy who tries to keep up with anime as best as he can. You're talking to the guy who goes to the bookstore. I've been around loads of people. Sadly, Jujutsu Kaisen, as popular as it is not as universally known as some people would like to make it out to be. I'm just sorry. Okay, boomer. Do you even know what a boomer is? Definition in the chat. Right now, give me the definition. And give me a chance to drink. King Arthur versus Lancelot never happened in the original story. Nope. Because not even the fanfic writer who created Lancelot could justify him beating King Arthur without getting murdered by all of his fans. Because King Arthur, very, very popular guy. A boomer, they ruined the economy and they do not know anything. That says absolutely nothing. Slang for older generation person, right? Yeah, but which generation? No. And I'm gonna lean into this. As I once had a student be all like, "Man, Mr. Jensen, it smells like ass in here." To which I turned around, I stared at her, and I said, "So please explain to me how you know what ass smells like. Tell me. I need to know the story. And what exactly does it smell like?" And I've never seen a teenager shut up so fast before. I don't think that she spoke for the next half hour, not even to her friends. So you are in my house now. When I demand a definition, I want that definition. Art says, AKA my parents' generation, baby boomers. But who exactly are the baby boomers? Who are the baby boomers? You might actually be very surprised who the real baby boomers are. Say who is in that very select generation. Because, for instance, post World War II, yes, but what part of post World? Because we are all post World War II. And I'm not saying this to be facetious, but it really actually is a way to try to help people understand something here. Born between 1946 to 1964. That might be what the internet now says. I can tell you this as someone who is now classified as a millennial. 3 years ago, I was not a millennial. I am now, because they decided to change the definition. Baby boomer refers specifically to 1946 to 1950. It's a very, very select group. And will you be surprised will you be surprised to find out when we refer to the boomers destroying everything and yada, yada, yada. But is that really the case? Because, for instance, within the 1946, 1964, that would say that, for instance, that my dad's a baby boomer, but he is not anything part of that particular culture or anything like that. He is much more of the early Vietnam world. Hard worker, contributes to society, contributes positively in politics and all that stuff. And you'd be surprised that a lot of other older people do the same as well. And what I find really silly, is how people are all like, they're looking for a certain group of people to blame. And the more blame that you can heap on others to justify why something sucks in your life right now, it's just a way of communicating and when I say communicating, that's actually not the correct word right there. Whatever. I will not get fancy with my words. Commuting. There it is. It's a way of commuting your own responsibility for the situation that you find yourself in. Now, Camille's Harem is not a political channel, so I'm not going to get involved in all of the messy details there. But the fact of the matter is that all of us, no matter situation, have certain qualities and opportunities before us where we can end up doing a lot of good. A lot of good for other people, a lot of good for ourselves. Baby boomers are a very, very, very niche select part of a larger generation. So something to consider right there. I'm not a baby boomer, not even by decades, by many decades. I, at one point, was not a millennial. I am now, apparently. Why is that? Because people need more people to get angry at. So, some food for thought. I'll just say real quick, one of my fallings out with another YouTuber came in part because he's all like, you millennial. And I was like, hold the phone. Because again, 3 years ago, I wasn't a boomer. I wasn't a millennial. And now I'm a millennial. Also, what's your evidence for the graduating class of 2007 was so detrimental to the entire country? Because I can tell you this, some of the people that I graduated with are now high-ranking cops. They serve in the military, serve in Washington, D.C., are nurses, are doctors, are filmmakers, are mothers and fathers. Amazing people. And here I am as a YouTuber. I am contributing. And I'm just like, what? I'm like, where you're just looking for someone to blame, someone to get angry at. And Hannah had me saying right there, we young people get a lot of flack for no reason. Exactly. Why are we giving out so much flack on people? We're looking for people to blame for the problems in our lives. We need to stop. Take care of yourself. Do the best that you can. Look for the opportunities within your own life. Make the most of them. And don't look to blame other people. It's a sad game. The old generation always says that about the younger generation lacks standards. I know. And I mean, I can harp on the younger generation because I was a teacher. But at the same time, let me just round off this tangent right here. When I went to the county fair this year, a couple months back, I actually ran into one of my old students. When I was teaching him, he was a bit of a slacker and a goofball. But one of the things I recognize about him is that he did very well whenever he had hands-on assignments, which is kind of difficult in a history setting. History can be very hands-on, but the problem with teaching hands-on history in a high school setting is that you often lack the resources. Like, you need to go to the mining town. You need to go into the archive. You need to get those ancient scriptures and scrolls in front of you and feel them. You need to feel the weight of weapons in your hands. You got to climb that mountain to go up to that monastery or to that awesome castle. That's hands-on history right there. Kind of hard to do that in a high school classroom. But when I met that guy again at the county fair, the guy was doing well. He had a job. He has a job as an electrician. He no longer smelt a bad BO. You could tell that he was taking care of himself. He was there with his family. And I was just all like, you are doing well. And I'm so happy that you're doing well. I know that we had some of our rough moments in class and everything, but those moments did not define you as a person. You became your own man, and he's happy doing what he's doing. Great. Absolutely phenomenal. And that's what I love to see. The older generation needs to back off, and the younger generation needs to have a little bit more grace. We could all afford to give ourselves a little more grace. Let's just be honest. All right, now let me take a drink. Okay, so coming back to fights, because that's why we're here. All right. So, again, a little bit of review. All good fights are well set up. The audience needs to know how we got to this fight. They need to understand the characters, the stakes involved, and the setting of the fights. If you neglect the characters or to explain how and why they cross paths violently, it creates a disconnect between the audience and the story, which you do not want to have. People need to understand how they got to this fight, and they need to have an inkling of what the heck is going on in order to enjoy it. They need to understand the stakes involved, the personal, the world-building stakes, the plot stakes. And those could be grandiose, or they could be very small or very personal. It doesn't matter. If the fight is so much as all like, you looked at me wrong, punk. Time to put up those dukes. That honestly is as good as, I must get the Infinity Stones in order to wipe out half the universe and save us from our own greed and destruction. Shade says, I mean, One Punch Man does not do that. Oh, Shade. Oh, Shade. Let us consider One Punch Man. What's the big beetle dude's name? Let's take that as a fight. That fight is fantastically set up. What the heck even brought Saitama and his buddy out to meet this guy? Because Saitama was trying to reach a sail. He was hoping that he was going to get to the sail on time, and he can't because he's got to fight this monster. And even though he beats it in one punch, he's still late for the sail. And that's the stakes. That is the stakes for Saitama. All he wants to do is to go shopping. It's so great. Whereas like everyone else is like, this is for the fate of the universe. This is for the fate of humanity's evolution. I am the smartest man ever. I've made clones of all of myself, and I made the most dangerous clone into the Kabuto, the greatest of all of human invention, the apex of evolution. He gets punched and destroyed. Such a great setup, such great payoff. Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. Even the mosquito fight. What brings it on? Saitama is dealing with mosquitoes. The fact that with all of his power and speed, he can't kill one flipping mosquito. If he wants to kill swarms of mosquitoes, he can go to Europe. The mosquitoes in Europe are slow and stupid. Bless them. They're so easy to kill over there. Master Knight says, I'm remembering when Saitama was angry at this group of extremists for personal reasons. But remember, Saitama, little fort fight, somebody in space, bro, does not have any limit. Well, yeah, that's part of the world building mechanic. Is that Saitama is OP. He is more powerful than anything else in the universe as far as we know. He can defeat everything in one punch. What are the stakes? The stakes are that it's no longer fun for him. He feels depressed, alone, lost. And it's the adventures that he goes on that help him to start developing relationships, good positive friendships with Genos and then with King, and so on, allowing him to feel like he actually belongs because his power removed him from everyone else. It's a personal journey in coming to terms with who he is, what he is, and becoming friends with people who truly matter to him. That's the beauty of One Punch Man. It's not about the power. Anyone who focuses on the power has kind of missed the point, because the author, one, is making fun of power scaling. Instead, he decides to use the tropes of power scaling to tell a far more emotional story. And that's why One Punch Man is truly a classic. And why even after the horrible second season adaptation, people still love One Punch Man, is because of the depth of the story and not the action. Comcrest says, hello, what did I miss? A long tangent about generations, definitions, and the introductions into fights, and also why Luke versus Vader might be one of the universally well-known fights. Even though there's so many other amazing fights out there, there's very, very few that actually connect with most people. And that, I believe, that's why I would argue comes a lot down to just the setup and the payoff and what is so good, what so resonates with large audiences. Terrence Scott says, "Rawr." Excuse me. The Amazing Gamer 111. Hey, great to have you back again. I see this as their motivation to keep moving forward, to continue to pick up the breadcrumbs, to make a full loaf throughout the series. I imagine that's normal. Stormcrow says, gonna sleep in now, but I'll leave you all with the universally known fight, Shipping Wars. Also, Death is the Night. Well, Stormcrow, thank you for the comment, and sleep well. I'm amazed says, heck, common writers' whole bread and butter is masked dude fighting evil organizations with often purified versions of their power or equipment. All right. Shay says, I will tell you the truth. He's just angry. I told him, okay, boomer. Oh, you see what I just get upset with. It's like, know your definitions, for crying out loud. Because again, when I hear people just like throw out stuff like, I'm like, that's like lazy. Come at me with sophistication. If you really want to insult me, say, hey, guy who doesn't have a generation. Oh, you thought you were an 80s kid, but you're not. Sorry, the question is further up the chat. Art says, Shipping Wars is a television show about shipping containers. Yes, it is. Concraft says, I haven't finished chapter 4 of Deltarune yet. College fit in the way, and I was stuck in the Roaring Night boss fight for a few days. Well, hey, Commoncraft, I understand that, and don't worry, we're going to try. Well, there will be some spoilers for chapter 4 later on. So if you, when we get to that, don't worry, you can clock out at that time, and we won't spoil it for you. Okay, next slide. So any good and relevant fight has payoff. Any fight worth its salt must have consequences. All of the build-up and action, there must be a conclusion that does something for the characters, moves the plot along, and keeps the audience engaged. Often we forget about this other than a quick sprint to the happy ending. Because way too many movies, and I blame Disney for this, just put all the great fights at the very, very end. We've gotten better. Overall in storytelling, but it's still something you sometimes run into. But a fight must have its consequences. It must have its payoff in order for it to remain relevant in any kind of way. Again, you asked for it. The Monkey King from the Journey to the West is the inspiration for Goku. Shade, I know that. I do know that. I've just never heard about the Monkey King versus the Buddha before, which is why I said I've never heard about it. I'm being honest, never heard about it. Did know that Goku was based off of the Monkey King. One of these days, I'm hoping that Red over at Overly Sarcastic Productions will finish her long-running series on the Journey to the West. Alas, she's been sidetracked by so many other stories. Concrest says, I did play Chapter 4 a bit. Got the third part of Chapter 4 before finding out that I missed the optional boss in Chapter 4. So I went back and then decided to go back even further and finish the Knights. Okay, awesome. Now then, with all that being said, all of that stuff, let's start talking fights. Now, sound off in the chat. How many of you have actually seen Dawn to Dawn? Because if I'm going to talk about Dawn to Dawn, I need to make sure that that I know how much detail I should go into. Terrence says, I'm head out now. Well, Terrence, thank you so much for being here, and I hope that you have a wonderful day, evening, morning, wherever you are at. But yeah, sound off in the chat. How many of you guys have actually seen Dawn to Dawn? Just that way I know how much detail to go into to help set up this particular fight that I will be showing you all. And I'll actually be pulling up. Art says, never seen it. Omega says about 5%. Conquest says, OSP's Journey to the West is one episode a year series, if I understand it right. Oh, really? I didn't know that. But that would kind of make sense. Art says, act like I'm in first grade and know nothing. All right. Okay. Well, for those of you who haven't seen Dawn to Dawn, let me just say this. It is absolutely worth watching. The first episode is a little bit rough because it gets pretty invasive, to put it politely, for the YouTube algorithm. Yes, the official soundtrack is fire. I agree with Hannah on this. I highly recommend checking it out if you guys get the chance. It is a phenomenal series with some really, really smart fights. Holy cow. There's some really good stuff in it. Now then, let me explain in brief without getting too complicated. Bring down the audio right there. So Dawn to Dawn is about a boy and a girl. Can I make it any more obvious? Dawn to Dawn is about two characters, Okarune and Momo. Okarune is all about the occult, aliens, weird monsters that run around in the forest and are really blurry. Momo doesn't know anything about that. She doesn't believe in it. She's more into the spiritual aspect of things, into ghosts and demons. And the two of them end up creating a very unlikely friendship because Momo gets dumped. Or more like she does the dumping, because she realizes that her boyfriend is just an absolute jerkwad. And now she feels really depressed because she's like, I just want to have a rugged thug with like a kind heart. Specifically, she wants to find a men like the actor Ken Takakura, and more specifically, like the Yakuza characters that Ken Takakura would play on television. And that's a real actor. You can look him up. So that's basically it. So that's how everything starts off. The two of them dare each other to go prove that the other thing they believe in doesn't exist. So Momo goes to an abandoned hospital to talk to aliens, and Okarune goes to a haunted tunnel to prove whether or not there's this Turbo Granny spirit. Come to find out, aliens and ghosts are both real. Okarune gets possessed by Turbo Granny and loses his balls, and Momo gets kidnapped by aliens who attempt to dissect her, and they awaken psychic powers within her in the process. And now the two of them, because of that experience, are trying to save Okarune from dying to Turbo Granny while fending off all of these aliens invading Earth, trying to get revenge on Momo and Okarune for defeating them in the first episode. That is basically the plot. Art says, "Wait, what? What part should I back up on?" A bad guy with a heart of gold? Yes. Yes. It's amazing when you come across those kinds of guys. What is with anime manga referencing real actors? Because it's some, and this actually coming back to answer that question, Commoncroft. I actually go into some detail about that in my script for the amazing Digital Circus episode 5. And references are a way to enhance the viewing or reading experience for the people who are in the know. And if someone doesn't know but decides to look into that reference, then it just enhances the experience. If a reference is, though, made to try to get nerd cred, then it's usually very heavy-handed and doesn't lend itself in any positive way to the story. Conquest says, and they get involved with each other's obsessions, and not in the normal fun way. Yes, that's very true. Who wrote this? Who did write up Don to Don? Let me pull this up. The Don to Don mangaka. Yukinobu Tatsu. Yukinobu Tatsu is the mangaka for the series. So that's who made it. And I'll just say this, Yukinobu Tatsu is nuts. There's so much insanity in the series. Kung Fu Hustle's a goldmine of references. Yes, it is. So glad you bring that up. Well, so let me then contextualize the fight that you guys are seeing on screen. So the aliens have already once tried to get revenge on Momo and Okarun by sending a sumo wrestler alien to kill them, and it didn't go over very well. So the aliens decide that they are going to go big in killing them. They have a plan to separate the two of them. They enclose the entire school into a special space where they can over time transform the entire school into water. So slowly but surely, everything solid becomes a liquid. And as this is happening, there is the Loch Ness Monster roaming the halls trying to murder Momo. And meanwhile, the other aliens corner Okarun and they use their psychic energy to block off his curse powers. So that way they can then have him get beaten into submission by a mantis crab alien. So that's their plan. And the hope is that by turning the entire school into water, it will take away any advantages that they have. Like, this is our school, this is our town. We know this place, but what if the very environment that you're used to suddenly changed into something else, and that could be used against you because the Loch Ness Monster can use the very environment as it transforms into water against them, because it can now fly anywhere, or it can swim anywhere it wants to and attack them from all directions. And the mantis crab also punches stronger while it's underwater. So very deadly. I was going to say, what is this guy on? I want some. He is high on nerdum, I'll tell you that. Scooty Booty, yes, Scott, you're here. Damn, I remember that fight being insane. Loch Ness was intense, and all the alien wanted was milk. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, this fight is absolutely just bonkers. Now, one of the things that makes this fight even more insane and interesting is that another character gets thrown into the mix, Ira. So let me pause this right here. Let me bring it back. So the aliens did not count on one other character being there. So you got Okarun right there with his glasses, looking up at the Loch Ness Monster, and he begins nerding out in the middle of the fight, which is great. The girl right next to him was not meant to be there, and the aliens didn't know that she had special powers, which is why she gets wrapped up into this. Because when they create their trap is meant to only isolate people with high energy. Ira gets sucked into this. Why? Because she has consumed the power of a yokai, of a monster. Because in some of the previous episodes, when her powers awaken, when she gets a hold of Okarune's golden testicle, yep, that's a thing. When she gets a hold of the golden ball, it awakens powers within her, which allows the Silky, who has been stalking her for years, to finally interact with her, and it tries to consume her ultimately. Okarune and Momo manage to defeat the Silky, but in the process, Aira actually dies, and the Silky gives up its energy and ultimately its life in order to ensure that Aira comes back to life, because the Silky actually loves Aira as a daughter. Aira now has the powers and abilities of that spirit, which is why she ends up here in this fight. Arts, your reaction is absolutely justified. And Aira, since being saved by Okarune, now has a massive crush on him, and so she gets pulled in because she has powers. She stays with Okarune because she has a massive crush on him, and it's thanks to her powers that the aliens are held off just long enough for Momo to catch up, and then for the fight proper to really get underway. And it's a really cool fight where everyone has to use their powers in order to defeat these aliens. And when the Loch Ness Monster decides that it's just going to start killing everyone, including the other aliens, one of the aliens, out of desperation, fuses itself with the mantis crab and with the Loch Ness Monster to create just this abomination. Right there. This disgusting thing that you see right here. This is what happens when one of the aliens merges with the Loch Ness Monster, and it becomes this absolute monstrosity that can shoot laser beams. It can swim through the school. It can punch real hard. It can punch good. The teens, and at this point, the entire school is now one massive block of water. They have very limited air. There's only like a few classrooms that have retained their shape with just a little bit of breathing room left. So like the kids are all like, okay, we're almost out of oxygen. We are completely stuck in the water. We are screwed. And Momo, this is a neat aspect of her character, is that even though she's a Gyaru, which would normally imply in most stereotypical ways that she's an airhead, that she doesn't know anything. She's a bimbo. However, Momo throughout the series continuously proves that she's actually a really smart cookie, and she's a good student, and she thinks on her feet. So in this fight, she starts coming up with strategies for how they're going to be able to beat this amalgamation. And it requires her to use her psychic powers to move Okarune around in the water, while Aira then uses her spiritual or her new abilities to send her hair out to the creature, creating a kind of road. Momo goes up against the fusion monster, right up to its face, and creates an air pocket with her powers. Aira creates this road with her hair, and then Okarune, using Turbo Granny's powers, basically becomes a human missile, zips down the hair, and then drills his way through the entire Loch Ness Monster amalgamation and shreds it from the inside. Really, really cool fight. Please tell me it doesn't involve grabbing anything else. Oh, there's lots of other grabbing, Arts. There's lots of other grabbing. This show and manga really flirts with a lot of innuendo. Now, what's great about this particular fight, because again, it's cool how it's executed, but the setup is where it ultimately shines. The plan to isolate and kill the teenagers, why the aliens are even after them, and why they bring who they bring. Okay, then. But Aira, now having a crush on Okarune, being brought on in when that was unexpected, and really helping to kind of save the day by buying time. How Momo and Okarune both have gotten their abilities. There's another thing I didn't bring up, how Momo and Okarune have kind of a falling out just before this fight because of a misunderstanding. And throughout this fight, they were trying to get over that. And so when the fight ends, Okarun and Momo have finally made up. And yes, it's very suggestive. It's very suggestive. Where the last shot of the episode is, where they're back in the school. The school's been restored, but they are soaking wet, and there's a puddle all around them. Okarun is naked because of his fight with the aliens, and Momo has also lost most of her clothes in order to avoid drag, which is a thing in swimming. So Scott's right. It's chaotic all the time. Infinite %. Yes. So the two of them are one is actually naked. The other one's effectively naked, and they're on top of each other, soaking wet, in the middle of the hallway, in the middle of the school day, suggesting that they've made up. Yes, kiss and make up. What did you think the makeup meant? So after this, Momo and Okarun now trust each other a whole lot more. They've gotten over their first real big fight as friends. And we've now firmly established Ira as a romantic rival to Momo, even though Ira, bless her, doesn't stand a chance. Because Momo is not only first girl, she is best girl. Concraft says, "Oh, the story that has the MC literally loses family jewels and has another character get powers from touching that flirts with innuendo? What a shock. A twist, I say." Yes. Now then, again, Dawn to Dawn is bizarre. It is weird. Yet despite it all, I highly recommend checking it out. Because as weird as it gets, the character development is phenomenal. And coming back to something that Scott brought up about how the one alien just wants milk, the mantis shrimp alien is in all of this. This is one of those shonen things where you find out during the fight or after the fight, oh, I was doing this because I just really wanted this. You find out, and this is kind of silly in the moment, but actually ends up having massive payoff later, is that this alien is working with the other aliens because he needs to get milk for his son. Lo and behold, cow's milk is perfect for his son. And so an alien invasion is averted by Momo and Okarun giving the alien milk. Now, because of that, because they give this alien milk and avert an alien invasion, another alien comes to share his thanks with them later on and it's like, thank you for helping out my buddy. Here, have this weird techno fabric. That techno fabric is so dang important throughout the rest of the story. Holy cow. We aren't actually yet to that point in the anime, but it'll be coming up in the next season. And that techno fabric is incredible. Conquest says, sounds like Dawn to Dawn takes the approach of everyone has fan service to equality. The answer is yes. Absolutely. And holy cow, it's so well animated too. Okay, so that is one example right there. The whole fight against Nessie is incredible. And it's actually, in terms of the fights within Dawn to Dawn, it's one of the earlier ones. It also has some of the longest reaching consequences of any of the fights in the series. I've read the manga all the way up to the newest chapter. There's only one other fight that actually beats it in terms of its relevancy throughout the series, which is pretty remarkable. Scooty Boo says it's the Oprah approach to fan service. Lasai, and you get a nude scene, and you get a nude scene. Everyone gets a nude scene. Okay, let's move on now to the next fight. Hallelujah, murder drones. Okay, so Sin versus everyone. Let me take a quick drink, though. Scott says, now you've just made it cringy. Yeah, I kind of have. Again, yeah, it's weird, but here's the, like, I don't know how many of you guys have actually seen my videos about Vermilion Gold, which on surface level, Vermilion Gold is just lusty busty succubus ends up with really tiny high school kid. Sounds so wrong on so many levels, because surface level it is. Holy cow. I remember coming across that manga and I was like hate reading it, because I was like, why would you do something so awful? And once you get past like the first few chapters with the shock factor, much like with Goblin Slayer, once you get past the shock factor, you're like, wait a second, there's a really good story here. Holy cow. Why did you go this route? Why did you go with the weirdness right off the bat? With Vermilion Gold and with Goblin Slayer, the shock factor is the hook to pull people in. And we can argue about whether or not that's actually a good idea for a lot of stories. Dawn to Dawn, on the other hand, its weirdness from the get-go is a promise. This story is weird. This story is going to go into places that you weren't expecting. But if you're in for the ride, buckle up. And having read the entire manga as it so far has been released for Dawn to Dawn, it's incredible. There's amazing emotional moments. The character development is fantastic. The blooming romance between Okarun and Momo is some of the best that I've seen in any shonen, because of how, like, it's weird to say, it was weird for me to say this after like talking about how innuendo filled it is, but it actually is very respectful to those characters despite it all. And it's got so many amazing arcs where it takes characters that you thought you wouldn't like and transforms them into people that you just can't help but root for. And that's something that Dawn to Dawn does very, very well. That Scott says, because Japan, that's why it's weird. Yes. All right. Congress says, round reminds me of a joke about a girl complaining about fancy chainmail bikini she was wearing and wanted to wear the same. Cutaway to both guy and girl wearing chain bikini with dude happy and girl mortified. Oh boy, I don't want to wear the chain bikini. You don't need to sign me up for that one. Congress may also be a side effect of Japanese society being somewhat repressed. I heard that's one possible explanation before, at least. Yes, and actually I got to work with a Japanese professor in grad school, and that was exactly what she said as well. So coming from a lady from Japan, she would agree with you, Common Craft. But at the same time, you have to appreciate a people that are willing to indulge in the fantasy. There's a certain point where it gets a little bit weird and maybe goes in places that it shouldn't, and that's a wholly other different discussion. Let's get back to the final fight of murder drones. Now then, murder drones. We've been over this multiple times in the past. I'll just say it again. The ending is fantastic, and it's a real mess. It's a real mess because the payoff is, it's not great. Let's just be honest. And this is where the setup also gets a little bit wonky. So the setup, you have the setup for the return of V. You have the setup for the fight between Uzi and N against Absolute Solver / Sin. You've got Thad and Kitty coming around to help out in the fight. You've got Uzi's dad You've got Condor Man showing up for the final fight. There's like, you feel like it's going to just be this absolutely fantastic over the top brawl where all of these characters come together in a way to just save the day, and they do come all together. But as as we know, Lizzie. So Khan, Lizzie, and Thad, they don't really get any important screen time. They're played off more as jokes throughout the episode. As a result, all of their setup was for naught. The setup that we do get good payoff for is with V returning, what Jay was up to, the agreement that V had with the Absolute Solver. Like, all of that is really good. Of course, for those who wanted Uzi and N to end up together, you've got that. The day is saved. Maybe it's a horror story, so the ending is ambiguous. So that's that. I mean, that part is fine. Like, Liam nailed the horror ending. He nailed the big relationship between Uzi and N, and he delivered on what happened with V. And we get a fantastic fight between them and Absolute Solver. Let's just be honest. It's gorgeous. It's amazing. This is on par with what Hollywood can produce at its best in terms of action quality. It's so dang good. But the problem is in the setup and in the payoff, because so much payoff isn't there. And especially for Uzi being able to fight toe-to-toe against Sin, how is she able to use the Absolute Solver? We didn't get any of that. It's one of the reasons why the fan-made episode Intermission is so good, because it provides some of that much-needed world building and character development, especially in regards to how Uzi would be able to use her powers. That we miss the exploration and training of her powers. She's just suddenly able to use them. And the whole issue with how she needs to consume oil, and they seem to just kind of skirt around that. The whole vampiric aspect of the show really just kind of went out the window. And so that setup is left off to the side where it really shouldn't have been. Conquest is a fantastic mess, especially because it still has lots of hidden hints to future events, which never happens. There's a weird shadow and a blink, and you miss it in a moment in the credits, a creepy smiley shadow that was shown only once in the concept art behind Doll, which is what? I saw jokes about Liam going and making his own show just to have an AMV battle video that was canon. The answer is yes. That is absolutely what he was up to. Oh, holy cow. Man, I could believe that, especially with some of the weird shenanigans that Liam has gotten up to. I mean, it is a whole lot of fun, but like, for instance, like pausing it right here, Uzi eating the core, like, okay, that's interesting, but what did any of that mean? Why did she go about to do that? It's just, hey, bite me? Maybe. But like, we're left with so many questions. And again, it's a horror story, and the more questions, and you want to still leave some things lingering to keep people on edge, keep up that anxiety. But yeah, there's just so much that was left on the table that unfortunately the payoff just, it wasn't there. And that's just, it's sad. Let's just be honest here. That was sad. Because there could have been so much more done with the characters, with the world. And while I'm okay with not fully understanding Absolute Solver, just because there's so much more that could be done, I'd like to have seen it done. And maybe one of these days they'll come back for season 2 of Murder Drones, but I'm not going to be holding my breath for that. And I unfortunately will probably never get the next episode of Internecian Cube, because Murder Drones basically is Internecian Cube. Conquest says that their OST, that weird detail when after Uzi eats the core and we see her vision, her IED is glitches to show the name Uzi, Sin, and Doll overlapped. And thinking of Doll, who even is Doll? All of that setup for Doll to lead to no payoff was just so frustrating. So frustrating. That's a Game of Thrones move, and we do not appreciate that in this house. Not in my good Christian household. Oh man, it's just so frustrating. But like, let me actually pull up. Let me actually pull up the episode, and we'll get to the fight. Well, that's J versus V, which was great to see. It was great to see. It was a fun. That was definitely a fun aspect of the fight. I liked seeing V really like be self-assertive in a way that wasn't toxic, and getting to know what deal she had with Absolute Solver was absolutely soul crushing. As someone who was a big Envy shipper, getting that side of the story was just, yeah, that was sad. And it helped to kind of help to justify why the two of them don't get together. Yeah, sure. I know that the story was building up N and Uzi as the main couple. Absolutely get that. But because N just had such a strong connection with V, and we could tell that V did care for N, it's like, where are we going to go with that? Well, we get our answer. But yeah, the storytelling wise, it was a mess. Action wise, like, it's, I mean, when you watch this, it's just so smooth, so creepy. Yes, there'd be those people who would argue it's so dark, it's so dark in tone and in color, it's hard to see things. Oh yeah, true, that's the atmosphere, and it is a way to get away with some of the mistakes in the animation. That being said, still, like, you just look at this, like I am even getting slight chills just looking at this again, even without the audio, because it's rendered so well. The creepiness, the dark atmosphere helps to really set the tone and the feeling for this particular fight. And just the way that Sin is animated as she just brutally cuts her way through Uzi and through N, just without any hint of mercy. Like right here, she is 100% going for the kill. And you can tell that the heroes don't stand a chance in this particular case, which is why then after they escape, she knows she's going to win, which is why she then starts getting way more creepy and malicious in how right here she is tickling / tearing N apart. And then when she starts hunting them in the tunnel, she takes her time. She takes her time because she knows she's going to win, which is a great feeling to instill within the audience, to keep them on the edge of their seat, because we don't want Uzi and N to lose, but everything that we're seeing here in this moment tells us very clearly that they are going to lose to Sin unless somehow something changes, which is where we would hope that Khan and Thad and Lizzie would come in to help save the day. But other than throwing the railgun Uzi's way, now again, they just kind of get played off for jokes. Lick. This is such a great creepy scene. Callback ping. Say again, like the execution. Then here, and this is why I really wanted to bring up this fight, because the execution of the fight is perfect, in my opinion. I mean, as perfect as anything can get in terms of the execution of the fight. This is right up there with Aang versus Ozai and Zuko and Katara versus Azula. Like, it's got like the pacing, the action, the twists, the dialogue, the emotion in the moment is so good. But why is it then that something that is executed so well, why does it not live up to the same vaulted heights as Aang versus Ozai and Zuko and Azula Zuko and Katara versus Azula? It comes down to the setup and the payoff. When we watch Zuko versus when we watch Zuko versus his sister, we understand the whole dark history that has led us to this moment. We have watched Zuko redeem himself from villain to hero to friend, and how he is going to do something that at one point he wanted to be the Fire Lord. He wanted to be back in his father's good graces and earn back what he lost. But in this case now, he is not doing this out of a sense of pride, but he's fighting against Azula to save his family and to save the Fire Nation as a whole. That is what he is doing. And so we just have all of that fantastic detail that brings in those emotional stakes. It's not just about bringing the plot to its conclusion. It's about saving a family. It's about saving a nation. And it's about proving to Zuko himself once and for all that he has become a good man. And he does it. And not only does he do it, he saves Katara. He could have let Katara get struck down by Azula's lightning and finish off Azula as Azula is being cruel and focusing on the waterbender, but he doesn't. He sacrifices himself to redirect the lightning and almost dies in the process. And then Katara proves just how much Zuko has grown by not abandoning him, but by saving him. And not only saving him, but not even killing his sister, which was an option on the table. And where do we go then from there? Zuko becomes the Fire Lord. Katara is a true hero at this point, worthy of all the other people. And yeah, people, of course, we like Katara and everything. And of course, she's a hero. She's with the Boomerang Gang. But she shows her true quality as someone who learned blood bending, which is just an abomination of water bending. We see her at her best when she saves Zuko and doesn't kill Azula. And so there's that emotional, fantastic payoff there at the end. Aang versus Ozai, phenomenal. Aang, who doesn't want to kill Ozai, finding a way to beat him while staying true to his principles. Being a hero who defies fate and still wins the day in a good way. That he retains a sense of innocence despite it all. It's just so fantastic. It's not just that we finally have beaten the Fire Nation and have saved the Earth Kingdom. It's about so much more. It's that spiritual aspect, which has been built up wonderfully from the beginning of season 1 all the way up until that point. That is why it works so well. Even though Uzi and N versus Sin is mechanically as a fight and animation-wise right up there with the finale of Avatar: Last Airbender, it doesn't reach those heights, unfortunately, because the setup isn't where it needs to be and the payoff wasn't complete. That is, again, why the setup and the payoff are so critical to telling a good fight. Now then, Shade says, he cheated in the fight, was a 2-on-1, not a fair fight. It became a 2-on-1 when Azula made it a 2-on-1. He didn't cheat. Azula did. In my opinion, he's still a villain. Shade, you got to go back and watch it again. Because Zuko didn't cheat. Azula did. That is one of the important parts of that particular fight. Realistic from a fighting perspective, he better let the girl get hurt, and after that defeat his sister. Difference between emotional and realistic fights. And Shade, that is the difference between a hero and someone who just gets the job done. And it's one of the things I love about the book series Beyonders. I think Beyonders nailed the definition of a hero the best. Where the Blind King just simply says a hero is going to do the right thing, no matter what. And even though that sounds like something anyone could do, almost no one does it. What would have been better? Not risking Katara. even though it doesn't make sense from a logical set, from a strictly cold logical point of view, and even from an emotional point of view, it actually doesn't make much sense. But the right thing to do, as is explored in Avatar: The Last Airbender as a whole series, is that it's better to preserve and protect than it is to destroy. Go back to the fantastic episodes with the forest spirits. After the Fire Nation has destroyed this forest, and you get that panda spirit that goes berserk and begins abducting people. Though that episode introduced us to one of the most powerful themes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And it's so dang good. And it follows through right up to the very end. Excuse me. Craft says, Red from OSP also added the element that if Aang had killed Ozai, then Airbender culture would be officially dead. Past air avatars could sacrifice personal enlightenment for the greater good, but Aang is the last Airbender. Very, very good. I had not actually thought of that, but that makes absolute sense. Aang is trying to preserve his culture. If Aang went out of his way and sacrificed a strong tenet of Airbender culture and killed Ozai, it would feel like a betrayal, especially to a young boy, of everything that he believes in. Now, when we go back to when he went to the first Air Temple to try to find his teacher, and you see all those dead firebenders, yeah, airbenders can kill if they want to, and there's even that question of necessity. But for Aang, for the journey that Aang has gone on this entire time, was he was there to protect, not to destroy. And that it is always better to protect than to destroy. Because Aang, in the first season, nearly lost himself to the Avatar state by seeking to destroy rather than to protect when it came to protecting, when it came to fighting for the Northern Water Tribe. And that's a beautiful spiritualistic message, which, again, for people who are also fans of Star Wars, especially the original trilogy, that is a message that should resound with you, especially if you like how Luke engages Vader at the very end. Shade says, to be a hero, you need to sacrifice, not to be a coward. Well, that depends on the situation. Because is sacrifice always the right thing? And if you wonder about that, I highly recommend reading the Stormlight Archive. Read it all the way through from The Way of Kings up to Wind and Truth. Because Brandon Sanderson does a phenomenal job of challenging our notions of heroism in that series. And it's phenomenal. And it also still fits in with what Brandon Mole wrote in Beyonders. Again, I think Brandon Mole puts it the absolute best. And if you want to see what real heroism looks like, even in a very simplistic form, you gotta read Beyonders. Such a good book series. Holy cow. Shay says, I mean, I need to be realistic. The Airbenders Airbender culture got wiped out because the non-killing thing is a fact. They got wiped out because of Sozin's comet. That's why. I mean, it even says so in the show. The Firebenders feared to go against the air nomads until they had Sozin's comet on their side. So, again, bear that in mind. Go back and rewatch the series. Then Common Craft says, I heard a theory that Gatso, based on the positioning of the corpses, Gatso likely used a vacuum to kill the firebenders. Ooh, I didn't heard about that. I like that theory. That's a cool theory. And that's a great use of airbending as well. Choke out the fire. All right. So, but yeah, there's been my review of why, even though the end fight for Murdrones is aesthetically on point, it's amazing. I would honestly, like, I know that there's people, like, if you want to nitpick, you can nitpick anything into oblivion. But if you take it in all of its parts, the final battle, aesthetically, mechanically, on point, nigh perfect. Why does it fail? It fails because of the setup and the payoff. And that's something that I think all of us, if you want to write your own action sequences, you need to take that into account. That the setup and the payoff is where it is at. You can have a fantastic, well choreographed, perfectly executed, engaging, exciting, thrilling fight. But if the setup and the payoff aren't there, this fight falls apart and loses its relevance. And people begin to get upset because if it's really good, well, then it just feels even all the more disappointing when the payoff isn't there. Yeah! All right, gotta let a cat out. Yeah. Stop whacking me, kitty. There you go. Come on, there you go. All right. The cat has been released. Okay. So let me pop back on over here. So that was Murder Drones. Now let's talk about the Titan. Oh yeah. Oh, this fight in all of its complexity tells us a fantastic story. Let me just quickly say here. Comcast says the theory was based on the fact that all airbenders were dead with little to no signs of fire. Plus Gyatso, not looking like he died in struggle. He possibly turned the entire room into a vacuum, like some kind of secret forbidden airbending technique, the airbender equivalent of blood bending. That'd be cool. That'd be really cool if that were the case. And I like that it's not spelled out, at least to my knowledge, within any of the adjacent lore. So it keeps whatever happened with Gyatso a sad bit of the past that we just never have an answer for. But what we do know about him is that he cared for Aang and that he fought to protect his people and to protect Aang. And it heightens him as a fantastic mentor figure within the overall story. Now let's shift gears on over to the battle with the Titan at the end of Deltarune Chapter 4. Okay, so with this particular fight, let's consider the setup, and then I'll start playing the footage, because I think that if I start playing the footage, we'll then quickly outstrip some of the stuff that I want to say. That Conch says, I know if it haven't done it though. All right. Okay, so Conch says, I think I gotta leave. Haven't seen this fight yet in Deltarune. Psychoncraft, you got to go to avoid spoilers. I absolutely understand. Thank you so much for sticking around and for all of your comments. It's been great. Shay says, I want to say it again. He preserves his culture of not killing with blood armor, not intelligent way, not with the teamwork, but with plot armor. I'm just going to say this. Plot armor is a very easy hand-wavy excuse for saying that you want a character to get hurt more. I come back to a made-for-television movie about Augustus. Hey, Comcraft, yeah, thank you, thanks again. You're welcome. I come back to a comment from a made-for-TV movie about Caesar Augustus, where where there's this gladiator who becomes one of the main characters, and he's set up to lose in a fight. And when one of the highborn Romans like, why do that? Why bother injuring or maiming such a prized fighter? And then another person, why they speak British, I don't know. But no one says, well, because everyone wants to see their hero bleed. And I remember, because as a kid, I was watching with my family, and my mom's like, I don't want to see the hero bleed. What are you talking about? Not it. Like, it's true. A lot of people want to see the heroes struggle. Some people want to see the heroes bleed. Others don't want to see the heroes bleed, but they want to see them struggle. And when people who want to see their heroes bleed don't see them bleed, they're like, plot armor, plot armor. No. I think a good way of explaining like what it truly is plot armor, looking at the 7th Harry Potter book. Ginny Weasley gets off scot-free. Everyone else gets injured. Everyone gets PTSD. Everyone else has something horrible happen to them. Harry dies. Ginny Weasley, who broke all the rules. Ginny Weasley, who goes into the middle of the battle. Ginny Weasley, who makes stupid decisions, never gets hurt. After book 2, Ginny Weasley has plot armor because nothing truly bad happens to her that doesn't happen to everyone else in her life, which is like the death of Fred. Other than the death of her older brother Fred, nothing bad happens to Ginny. No matter what, it's just like, what? Even in the Ministry of Magic. Oh, it's just so. It's like, why? Why does she get off scot-free? It's because J.K. Rowling loved Ginny Weasley and didn't want her precious little baby to get hurt, whereas all the other characters do get hurt as they go along, especially in book 7. Plot armor is when you protect a character from the consequences of their choices. When you look at Aang, Aang suffers. He suffers something truly. And we get to see him go through his struggles as a result of his choices, and the consequences are long-lasting. Yeah, Aang wins, and we can argue that Aang maybe shouldn't have won as a young teenager versus Fire Lord Ozai. I would argue that the show actually does subtly set up why Ozai could actually never beat Aang in a real head-to-head fight. It's subtle, but it's really well executed with the dynamic of the Fire Lord family. So good. I was thinking about it actually just last week. But no, Aang doesn't really have plot armor. So again, plot armor is an interesting concept. I feel like that's something that we probably should return to for a specific video in the future, because it is a concept that I feel that, again, has become a real hand-wavy explanation to say why we don't like something. And sometimes we feel like we have stripped away plot armor from our characters because we say, oh, look, I made them suffer this one time. But plot armor is itself kind of like Mary Sue adjacent, but it's not a full Mary Sue trope either. And I think that's one thing. I think that would be good to go back and revisit that particular topic, because I know I did a video about that like years ago. Should come back to it. Art says this fight is certainly one that could be compared to the Chapter 1 fight. Chris and Susie's lives are on the line there, and it's what brought them together in the first place. This fight reminded them of that fact. Okay, yes. So let's actually build up from there, Arts. What's led us to this particular fight? I mean, yeah, we can say just generally everything has, but no, let's actually focus on it. Susie and Chris ended up in the Dark World back in Chapter 1. And now that we understand more of what's happening within the general story, it actually is a little bit suspect. What really is going on from the very beginning with the Dark World? That's something to theorize about later. But the two of them ended up in the Dark World and became friends. Unexpectedly. This wasn't something that Susie had ever expected. This adventure. Susie was the bully. She was determined to be the bully. And she started becoming the hero. She began to love being the hero by the end of Chapter 1. And she began having real friends. Chapter 2 begins to expand her circle of friends. Chapter 3 is about, like, I don't care if you're Darkners and if this is all imagination or whatever. You are my friend, Ralze. Lancer's my friend. Lancer's my first friend. And I love my friends, and I'm going to hold on to them no matter what. Then Chapter 4 introduces the prophecy. And we see that Susie smashes the prophecy because she doesn't like what it says is going to happen at the very end. And she's going to fight against it. Why? Because, dang it, she's not going to give up on her friends. That's what this fight is for Susie. It is not giving up on her friends. And we've had 4 chapters of her making friends, coming to terms with what some of that friendship means, and saying, screw it all. I don't care. This relationship is real to me, and I'm going to hold on to it. I'm going to fight for it. And by the end of this, we see her truly transform into a hero. The very last scene of Deltarune Chapter 4 is Susie's moment where it's no longer play pretend. Susie is a bona fide hero by the end of Chapter 4. This fight confirms it. That's one of the things that's so amazing about this. And what about Ralsei? Let's consider Ralsei for a moment right here. Ralsei was all about pacifism. We can become friends with everyone. That way we can avoid the worst of what could be. Ralsei, as we learn in Chapter 4, has known about the full prophecy since the beginning, and has held back the worst of it because he feared what that knowledge would do to the people that he wanted to be friends with. And oh my gosh, we've seen Ralsei just grow up so much since then. At the end of Chapter 1, he admitted that sometimes there are people that you just have to fight. But we didn't really ever run into anyone like that until this moment with the Titan. Because, like, for instance, when you do the Neo-Spamton fight with the pacifist route, Ralsei says, hey, well, he became our friend in the end, so everything's all right. And there was a way to defeat him without having to resort to violence. The fight with the Knight is it's fought to a standstill. And Ralsei knows a little bit about what the Knight is supposed to be within the greater prophecy. But he still hopes that by being friends with everyone, they can avoid the absolute worst. And yet in Chapter 4, it's revealed that you can't. The ending, such as it is coming. And there's no way around that, which Susie's like, screw that, we're going to fight against fate, and we're going to beat it. We're going to rewrite the story. And in this battle, this long sequence battle with the Titan, we get Ralsei leading the charge. Ralsei becomes the one who's like, let's fight. And that's a huge moment for him, because this is him accepting that there's some people you just have to fight against, and we are going to fight against fate. And now, as for Chris, well, we're still learning. We are still learning about what the heck is going on with Chris. But one thing, though, is pretty certain when we step back to consider it all. This is a big moment for Chris as well. Beating a Titan does indicate that fate can be changed. Maybe whatever Chris is in on, whatever plot or scheme, maybe there's another way to complete it. Maybe there's a way to sabotage it for the better from within. We're left a lot in the dark about what exactly is happening with Chris, and what Chris is doing with the Knight and with Carol, maybe other characters as well. I feel like there really is a huge conspiracy that is unfolding within Hometown. And this fight means that things can change. That something that seems so unbeatable can be beaten. And I think that for Chris, that's what this fight means. And it's been set up since the very beginning. Your choices just don't matter. You can't decide who or what you're going to be. That was told to us from the very beginning and emphasized again by Susie. And yet there's something about this fight that I feel is liberating to Chris. And especially because what happens at the end when they then go to close the fountain afterwards, Susie's smile makes it feel like all the darkness can just be brushed away. That's a big moment for Chris. So let's see here. Let me catch up with... Shade says, and for the Titans, we do not forget important thing why the legend of Deltarune is different. In Deltarune, an Undertale Titan do not exist in Undertale. Master Knight says, there's a case of plot armor to make the main character suffer. Iron-blooded orphans, where Ride took a shot to keep from obliterating the residents of a town, only for the shot to not kill Ride despite hitting him directly, and instead killed said residents. Oof. That's awful. Shay says, I mean, what prophecies she will become a friend of the heroes? How was that her choice or just fate? It was her choice. It was her choice. And do not forget Fluffy Boy. First, he knows a lot of knowledge. Should not have known like flower. And he said darker than darker from Undertale's connected to Gaster. If you do not know, she bleed when she done and have community things. She's half human, another half of monsters in Delta, and have blood. One of them because more skeleton boy, also blood and genocide routes. Shade, you're coming a little bit. It's a little bit hard to follow what you're all saying right there. There's a lot to speculate on. I'll just say that there's a lot for us to speculate on. Or it says Chris is stuck and doesn't know how to get out. And that's what I think we need to know more to be sure. Yeah, I agree. And it has got to go. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And hope that you're doing well. And we'll see you around the next video. And I agree with you, Arts, is that there's a lot that we just don't know. And there's definitely enough details for us to speculate on. I have a certain theory that I'll share some stuff with you guys with here after we go over this, but let's start talking about the fight. Because we've got all of this setup. Now, as far as this fight goes, what I find really interesting is that it begins with this climb. And while it seems like you're just trying to survive and everything, I think it's interesting that it ends with Chris going head to head against the eyeball from the Titan. And having it and having this moment where the Titan seems to be momentarily beaten. What I like about this is that for one thing, this gives us a sense of scale. This creature is huge. It is huge. And even though we quote unquote beat it, it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning. This first part of the fight is meant to again establish scale. It's meant to kind of give you a sense of hope before that hope gets ripped away. And I feel like that's an excellent aspect to building up the Titan as a solid villain. That for a moment you think that you're going to win, and then you realize this is just the beginning. Holy crap, this is just the beginning. So this comes back to one of the things I said earlier, like, yeah, you can defeat a villain, but if you're going to do that and have it still be dangerous, like there needs to be something else that comes after that. Like the villain was this was just a probing attack. This isn't even the full power. They're going to regroup, or there's something even worse right behind it that you didn't realize. All of that happens in this fight. Or it says the fight reinforces the effort it took to get here in the first place. I absolutely agree. Or it says also, prior to chapter 1, Susie believed that no one could be her friend due to her own nature. However, Chris, Lancer, and Ralsei showed her that someone thinks she's worth the effort. Amen. Shay says, we know an important thing. The ending of Deltarune came to Toby in a dream. And after that, he makes it with Undertale to create the game. Yeah, say we know that bit. Now, again, coming back to how this is where we get to see Ralsei determined to fight, which again is a huge deal for him. He's already said that he's come to accept that there's some people and some things you just have to fight against. Well, this is it. After going through an entire chapter of accepting that Susie sees him as real and that their friendship is real, and his whole epiphany, thanks again to Susie, in chapter 4 that's okay to not always smile. Like, you don't have to bear this burden alone. He's not. He is sharing the burden of this fight with his friends. This is a great moment of character development for Ralsei right here in this fight. And he basically takes charge, even though Chris and the player are still in the lead. Like, as we go on, I like how he's just floating right there as he runs. Ralsei really in a way takes point in this fight, which is just great to see. Now then, again, here for a sense of scale, we got then another climb. We got more climbing. Again, it's reemphasized that, like, oh, you thought that like beating the Titan was going to be this easy, and not even close. Also, the Titan is spawning. This fight is becoming way more complex and complicated as more of these entities are introduced, and this gives us the realization that the roaring would be absolutely devastating if not stopped. One Titan is already just destroying the place, but look at this. It's beginning to spawn. It's summoning in all of these weird creatures, and the fight just keeps on getting more and more intense, and that's just one Titan. What happens when other Titans, because we've been told that there's more Titans, what happens when more Titans get introduced? This fight is just to give us a taste of what is to come. So then we come back then to the climbing, which at this point, this is more of a mechanic to help get us up to that top space. But again, it also just helps to emphasize just how huge and dominating this Titan is. And we see all this darkness coming out and the destruction that you are surrounded by as the chase and as the fight goes on. It's just really good how it emphasizes the stakes. And it's also fun to make Chris jump around. After all those jumping and climbing puzzles, we got to put it to use somehow. Am I right? But then after all that after the second round of climbing, we then have the proper fight against the Titan. So we now know just how huge this thing is. We know how destructive it is. We've already been introduced to the creatures that it spawns. And as the fight goes on, the other things that it continues to spawn are just kind of frightening and a little demented. I mean, these weird fish things, and later on, the weird mouth things, the odd barnacles that we can't destroy, and how it then like sucks them in and shoots out darkness. The tiers of this fight are just meant to help to indicate to us how powerful and dangerous this thing is, and how it's not just it's dangerous because it's so big and so strong, but because of everything else it brings into the fights, overwhelming us over time. And then with Gerson then coming in later on helps to re-emphasize. So let me pull this up here, because you then have the long fight after 2 climbing rounds, fighting against some of the spawn, then having this long fight with the Titan itself. Let's see here. Let's get up to Gerson. Because when Gerson then comes onto the scene, wham! There's the hammer of justice. What are y'all getting up for? As we have Gerson there now on the scene, this helps to reinforce that fate can be fought against, that you can rewrite the story. With Gerson showing up on the scene, hope is infused into the fight once more, that there is a chance. And Susie again emphasizes her protagonist power, how she is ultimately the hero at the end of the day, by being the one to make the crazy choice of grabbing Chris and then dunking the two of them down the Titan's face and gullet in order to get to the dark fountain within and shut it. Say it's a really, really just great moment. That again helps to set up where we expect the payoff to go that now that Susie has seen what the prophecy has to say, that Susie's got friends that she's going to fight for, and thanks to Gerson's teaching and this experience with the Titan, fate can be challenged. The story can be rewritten. And so we're going to see Susie now do that. And that's the choice that she's made. With Ralze, it's a little bit more difficult to tell what the payoff is going to be going further down the road. In many ways, the fight itself is kind of payoff for a lot of his character development because, again, we see him really stepping up to be the hero, taking charge, taking point, and fighting, choosing to fight, which is a big deal for him. So we get the payoff for him kind of like in the middle of the fights. And as far as Chris goes, again, we're kind of left in the dark. Deltarune, pun intended. Kind of left a little bit in the dark about where we might go with them down the road. But it's very clear, especially in the pacifist route, that they get the phone call, most likely from Carol, like, you made a promise, Chris. And Chris is left with a decision, teetering on the windowsill. Do they tip and go with Susie, or do they tip back and fall back on the choice that they made previously? Say, we'll see in Chapter 5 what the payoff is for Chris. So in a way, the jury is kind of out on just how impactful this particular fight is, but definitely for Susie, oh, it's all there. And I feel that if we're willing to get a little bit deeper into the character of the Titan itself, we find a lot of meaning for ourselves as the players, which is what my latest video is all about. Omega says, honestly, getting spoilers, late phase Prince Tutu from the story with Gaster appearing to pull the strings. You know what? It kind of does feel a little bit that way, but then again, I'm one of those people who's been saying Gaster since the beginning, even though up here like, Gaster's not in the game, don't say it. I'm like, yeah, we'll see. Arts, I'm beginning to think this whole adventure was planned to begin with, but Susie was an accident. Arts, I think that you might be onto something. So a little bit of theory crafting before we wrap up the lesson. Taking a drink of water right there. Keep yourselves hydrated, folks. It's summertime. So at least it is here in the desert. So I agree. I agree to an extent with you, Arts. I don't think that Chris and Susie were meant to go into the dark world together. Not that Chris is complaining. I think that for Chris, this is something that they really wanted. I would argue that it was intended for Chris and Noelle to end up in the dark world together at school, because Noelle is absolutely a part of the greater plan. And I think, and looking at the weird route / Snowgrave route / genocide route for Deltarune, I think that whole route is really and truly all about, this is what we were always going to do with Noelle. Corrupt her and turn her into a weapon, because that is what is needed for whatever plans are being cooked up in the shelter. And so that was the intention. Chris and Noelle were meant to go into the dark world together in Chapter 1, but it ended up being Chris and Susie. And so for Chapter 2, it was very purposeful. Make sure that there's a dark world that Noelle will fall into no matter what. We know that she'll be studying with Birdley. So we're going to put a dark world where they are going to study together. They will fall in, and then you, Chris, go in to make sure that Noelle is caught and is guided to become what we need her to be. But if you choose the other route instead, well, this is where our choices don't matter. Because if we go the route of trying to befriend Noelle, rather than transform her into the weapon, which is the weird route, she will still fall to whatever machinations are being cooked up, and she will become the weapon that Carol needs. Now, why is it that Carol is doing all this? Well, we'll get to that in a moment. Now then, let me wrap up the lesson. Final food for thoughts. Looking back at it, the fight in Dandadan between Momo and Okarun and the Loch Ness Monster, Uzi and En versus Sin, the fight against the Titan. Which battle is written better? Or does it come down to the individual strengths and qualities of each fight? You guys can either answer in the chat or you can think about that yourselves. How does something flashy and action-packed try to make up for a poorly written story? And can it work? Those are questions and your answers that I want you to bear in mind as you go out to write your own action scenes and your fights and your battles. As someone who really, really enjoys writing fight scenes and everything, again, I come back to one of my own examples from something that I wrote, where I have a fight scene that introduces the character Lagerblood, and I really enjoyed writing that fight scene. It's a ton of fun, but you have no idea who this guy is. You have no idea really why it matters. And at the end of the day, other than introducing Lagerblood, that chapter doesn't really matter. And it's something that I've always mulled over after publishing, where I'm like, you know what? As fun as that was, it only exists to introduce the character. It's a fight that doesn't, even though it's so cool, it's just there for an intro. I could have introduced him way better than that. Whereas one of the fights that no one will ever really remember in terms of its technical execution, because it was a really messy fight, the fight of the Crowned Hills in that same book, that fight ends up having massive consequences throughout the entire series because of what it does to the main character's sense of confidence, how he wavers, the fact that he nearly died, and so he has to learn how to use his powers better. It leads him to meeting up with people who then become some of his best friends. You find out how it was part of a greater scheme. All of these other details. And that makes that fight, even though it's not as memorable for its action, that fight becomes so meaningful because it has such long-reaching consequences. Its setup could have been done better. I'll admit that. But if you want to really get the full picture, just please read my book, Knights of Helicruise. So that's where you can find those two chapters. You can judge for yourself. Knights of Helicruise. Now, one of the fights that I enjoyed really writing, because it's just so, like, I'll toot my own horn. Oh, the last palette. Well, it's not the last palette. It's not the last fight between paladins, which are these massive mech suits, steam-powered mech suits, in the book Bleed, Steam, and Steel. But the last high-stakes duel that the main character Asuka fights is a fun one because the setup is that she's trying to save her family from destitution and dishonor by going into these high-stake duels where money and property are on the line in these bouts with these giant mech-powered suits or just samurai fighting each other. And her last big duel is against a guy that she doesn't really have any qualms with himself, but he's an ally to some of her enemies. And he comes onto the scene to humble her for good. Because she's been rising through the ranks, she's been beating all these other people, she's gaining all of the money that she needs to save her family, and it starts becoming more of she's doing it for the thrill. Because she could step away at this point, and her family will be safe. But now she's in it for the thrill. She's always wanted to be a warrior. Even though there's no war, this is her chance to fight and feel the thrill of combat. And she takes it a step too far with this one duel. And because she's not as crafty as her brother is, she doesn't realize that she's getting pulled into a trap. And she is sabotaged in this fight. And when she realizes that she's sabotaged, she knows she's going to lose unless she does something spectacular. And holy cow, does she end the fight spectacularly. It's a brief fight, but it's so much fun because there's that ticking time bomb. She's about to succumb to poison and get knocked out. So she's like, I only have like seconds. So she does a drastic move, which normally you would never do in a fight, but she catches the other guy off guard, smashes his paladin's helm in, and begins to crush his mech suit in half, seriously injuring him, and then she passes out from the poison. She wins, but her enemies, because she collapses, begin to spread rumors that no, she was the one who actually cheated in this fight. And it becomes a problem that's then taken up to the Emperor. And it's used to then truly dishonor everything that she'd been fighting against. The dishonor, the destitution, all of her gains get ripped away in one moment. And she's lost. She doesn't know how to fix this. But yet all of her fights that she's gone through up until this time, she's made other friends. She has mulled over grievances with some of her rivals. And those relationships help her to figure out everything that she needs to confront the Emperor and to save herself and her family. And oh my gosh, it's just, the payoff is so good, if I do say so myself. And it's all wrapped around this one very brief fight. It's one of the shorter fights in the book, but it's so meaningful because of the long setup and the long payoff. And that's what I want people to take away. Fights can be bombastic and brief. They can be drawn out and long and grueling. There's so many different ways you can write fights. But what makes a fight meaningful, engaging, and truly memorable is the setup and the payoff. Earlier, I asked you guys what you thought was like one of the most universally well-known fights. And Luke versus Vader in The Empire Strikes Back is the one that came up. And I definitely agree with that. Go back and watch that fight. It is not like in terms of so many of the other fights in Star Wars, seems like a boring fight. Like mechanically, it's rather boring. But oh my gosh, it's so good. Because of the setup and the payoff. So that's the lesson to take away from there. All right, let me catch up with what you guys have written right here. And then we'll do a little bit of theory crafting. Art says, Kylo Ren versus Rey in Rise of Skywalker has some things going for it. Fight on the ruined second Death Star. Kylo Ren is dominating the fight. Rey's on the defensive. No, there's a problem. However, do we care for these two characters? Was the build-up for this fight worth it? No, because the development just wasn't there for a lot of people. They couldn't settle on what they wanted to do with these two characters overall. Arts, that is an excellent example. Because the fight between Kylo Ren and Rey in Episode 9 of Star Wars on the Death Star is good. Mechanically speaking, it's fun. It's an engaging fight. But you're absolutely right. What was the setup for this? Contrivances. A whole bundle of contrivances and MacGuffins to get the MacGuffin to get the MacGuffin. And why should we care about this fight? Not really. It's just, yeah. Like you asked me what the immediate consequences are. I don't remember. I just remember that eventually they end up before Palpatine, and it's like I am all the Sith, I am all the Jedi, and it's like, okay, all right. Shade says, I mean, in Yu-Gi-Oh! And Land, this story, we see the Pharaoh, for the sake of winning, become evil, and for that he loses Yugi, and learning winning is not everything. Oh yeah, in the Orichalcos season, the one with Atlantis. I mean, hear me out. In Yu-Gi-Oh! When two people when two people are doing, they always the main character. Not all the cards are useless. Power of friendship and stuff like that. But in real world, it's totally different. Some calls are just 1,000 times better, and some are useless. I think the most matter is the cards. This is the biggest problem in the fight of Yu-Gi-Oh. As the amazing little Karibo put it, the heart of the cards. It's cheating. Tyler Gibbons said, how about Teen Titans versus Slade? It's been years, Tyler. It's been years since I last watched the original Teen Titans. What I do remember of that fight of the Titans versus Slade, oh man, that was like, even though I was missing a ton of episodes because I know I missed like half the season when I finally got to see it, so I was completely out of the loop. They did an excellent job of solidifying why, at least in my opinion, when I saw it, why Robin hated Slade, how Slade was toying with all of them. And we definitely get the long-reaching consequences of that fight. Holy cow. Even if Slade is not personally there, his presence is all over that show. And what it does to Robin, and then by extent to the rest of the team, I'd say that Teen Titans versus Slade was a well-written fight and execute, and not just for the action in the moment, but for the consequences. Definitely was there. Vader versus Sun is not a major fight, as I said it. Oh, shade. We'll agree to disagree and beg to disagree. Oh boy, it's not just nerds who know it. It's not just nerds. Arts, they had pulled the old gasp. You were a Palpatine. You should have done that in episode 8. Yes, should have been done in episode 8. Tyler says in TMNT 2012, Turtles versus Shredder final battle. Oh boy. I don't recall if I've seen that one. I'm going to say no, Tyler. I'm going to say no, because the fight between Turtles and the Shredder that I remember is from the mid 2000s, which was like that was a glory day of reboots. Because coming right out of the 90s, the animators and storytellers were still very bold with the stuff that they came up with, and the censors hadn't yet completely clamped down on them. They got good with some of the darker storytelling. The mid-2000s TMNT was phenomenal. Such good stuff. Anybody remember the 90s Turtles? I do. Fun times. The only way I got to watch it was a few times I went over to my grandparents because they had cable. I'm a kid who grew up without cable, so there's a lot of shows I didn't end up seeing. But man, 90s Turtles. Say the Turtles are just such good stuff. I tried introducing one of my nieces to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Didn't quite take. It's a fun show, but it doesn't always click for everyone. All right. So with all that being said, again, those are just some things I want you guys to bear in mind about what is it that really makes a fight good. Because again, we can quibble about the mechanics and everything. And it's fun to do like the battle autopsies and everything like that, which is again tons of fun. And I'm looking forward to doing a full analysis and breakdown. I know I've said it for a long time now. I do have the first 15 minutes recorded for this one, but a full breakdown, analysis, and comparison of the Battle of Helm's Deep versus the Siege of Oregion. And I'll tell you guys this now. The Siege of Oregion, mechanically, is very good. The Siege of it, and that's something that for a lot of people who hate the Rings of Power, they're like, no, Lars, it's such a bad battle. And I agree it's bad. But when you step back and you start breaking it down mechanically, the Siege of Oregion is the perfect formula it even copies, in many ways, the Return of the Jedi, but inverts it. And it also does the same thing with the Battle of Helm's Deep. And it's got a lot of great ideas going for it. It actually does. The problem is that the execution is so horrible that a lot of the great ideas get botched. And the setup is unfortunately kind of weird and wonky. It's, again, in the words of Old Man McGucket, it feels a bit contrived. Yeah. And then the payoff, the season just comes to an end. So there is no payoff for the siege. And so as a result, it's just, man, the writers had something that could have been amazing on their hands. They just, like so much else in that show, just absolutely fumbled. And my hope is that by doing that ridiculously long video, my hope is to illustrate what I truly mean by that, because I, again, as someone who loves great action scenes, who loves good fights, it's depressing for me to see it, not just as a Lord of the Rings fan, but I'm just like, you guys had so much. When people are like, oh my gosh, this and this was so stupid. Like, for instance, the whole collapsing the mountain. I will actually defend that and say that was actually a cool idea, horribly executed, but cool idea. On top of that, there is historical precedence for that. It's called the Battle of Tyre, or Tyre, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But I'm pretty certain it's pronounced Tyre. The Siege of Tyre by Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great couldn't get to Tyre. He was defeated by Tyre multiple times until he built a bridge of rubble right on up to the city and connected it to the mainland, which is effectively what the orcs do in the Siege of Eregion, which is a really cool thing to do. It actually is. It's just that the execution of it was, oh, so stupid. Oh. That's the problem. It's a great idea. There's historical precedence for it. How did you botch it? I will explain why. Shade says, I mean, a battle does not need to make a lot of sense. Like, I remember an old enemy where Space Japan was fighting another Space Japan with swords, and I love it. Even nothing makes sense. Here's the thing, though. It might have actually made a lot more sense than you realize. For instance, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. These guys are futuristic steampunk. It's a whole bunch of futuristic steampunk nations. They've got incredible machines. Why are these guys fighting with swords and with spears? There's actually precedence for that. It's known as the era of pike and shots. And it actually makes excellent sense. The world building of Nausicaa is incredible. If you just watch it and are all like, nah, what the hey? What? But you step back and you think a little bit about what's happening with Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind. Oh, boy. Oh, it's so intricate. I wish that it's one of those instances where it's like, yeah, Miyazaki would never have done this. He still would never do this. But if you could take this movie and transform it into like a one-season show, oh, it would be incredible. It would be so good. Shade says, I mean, what make it better, cool, and what make it intelligent, like examine the real world. When, for instance, when the Muslims were conquering the Persian Empire in Eastern Rome, they think they have larger number of soldiers using tricks is intelligent, but boring to watch. Boring to watch? Boring to watch? Oh, Shade. Hold on a second here, Shade. I'm going to put a link. Into the chat here for you. Allow me to introduce you to, I mean, this isn't of the Muslims taking on the Eastern Roman Empire. There's actually a really excellent video done by, I believe, is it Kings and Generals or History Marsh? Actually, no, I think it was History Marsh. Hold on a sec here. History Marsh. The Battle of Cannae. Cannae. Okay, I'm going to put this glorious link into the chat right here. Oh, such a good video. Such a good video. The Battle of Cannae in all of its glory. Oh man, tricking people into thinking that you've got larger numbers when really you don't. Oh, such a great tactic, and it can be pulled off brilliantly. It ain't boring. Oh. Oh boy, someone's getting spicy. Mucho grande spicy. I'm Omega. You would get a kick from the fight scenes from Kamen Rider Gav, especially through Kamen Rider Vram, the rider who aura farms the most out of the main riders. All right, let me pull up this guy since you put it right here, and I already pulled up the Battle of Cannae. Kamen Rider Vram. There we go. Okay, I now have him keyed up. I will be able to watch that later. All right. Try his debut fight. All right. Wait, other people. Wait. Oh, shade. Not for other people. It's not boring for me. For the other people for the average American. Watch History Marsh, my dude. Watch History Marsh. That's all I gotta say. I put that link into the chat for a reason. Try his debut fight. All right, I'll put that into my search. First fight. All right, I got it key. All right there. I'm Omega. I've got it keyed up to watch later. Okay, so let's round off tonight with a little bit of theory crafting, shall we? And since this will be Deltarune, I'm going to pull up what Deltarune footage I do have, because I don't have any good fresh footage yet from Chapter 3 for you guys. So let's see here. Let's go with... All right. All right, pause that. Okay. So, a little bit of theory crafting to round off the night. The Cruzy Discord is going crazy with this Chris knife theory. Which knife theory? I know I have not popped my head recently into the Cruzy Discord, so I am behind on the times there. But where did he keep that thing? Yeah, where did they keep that thing? Where does Chris keep the knife? Up their sleeve is my guess. Especially going back to Chapter 1, when they hold out their arm and then the knife blade appears right there. I think they just like flick of the wrist and slide it out through their sweater sleeve on into their hand. Like, there we go. One of the theories that I've had the chance to talk with some musicians in the comments for my last video, and looking for trying to find connections between like musically between, for instance, Don't Forget, Raise Your Bats, and everything like that. The songs have some similarities, but they are pretty different from each other in terms of their leitmotifs. However, here's my growing theory, and I want to do a full video of this if I can find more evidence within the game to really substantiate my claim here, because this is a bit of a fantastic claim, but I'm still going to make it. That Chris agreed to have the player's soul put into them. This was not something that was necessarily forced on Chris, like I previously thought. I think it was agreed because most likely Carol, through the phone call at the end of chapter 4, reminds Chris that they made a promise. Okay, they made a promise. Promise for what exactly? We know that something big happened when Chris, Azrael, Des, and Noelle went into the woods south of the graveyard and went on over to the bunker. So we don't know fully yet what all happened there. We just know that Des vanished. And we know that Asgore resigned because he wasn't able to solve the mystery of what happened. And this helped to lead to a rift, not just between the holidays and the dreamers, but it helped to justify the growing rift between Asgore and Toriel, leading to their divorce. I think that in the midst of all of this, with Des having gone missing and everything, that Chris went back to the bunker, or maybe even in the night that Des went missing, that Chris made the agreements to get Des back. But to get Des back, now there's got to be something that's got to be done. There's a ritual, a sacrifice that must be performed. And that everything that's been going on has been all to set up the acquisition of the necessary sacrifices for whatever. We don't know what. Let's be clear. We do not know for what. It could be for Angel's Heaven. It could be for something else entirely. Very likely for Angel's Heaven, but we can't say for certain. But Chris agreed to it. And so did Carol. Both of them have agreed to work together to get Des back. And Carol is willing to do anything to get Des back in a very cold and cruel way, even if it means hurting Noelle to do it. And it's kind of interesting. It makes you wonder, what kind of relationship did Carol actually have with Des? Because Des's room has been preserved by her family, and for Noelle, it's out of a sense of grief. For Carol, I think Carol's just like, no, we preserve it because I'm getting her back. My daughter's not dead. She's not gone. She's coming back. Come hell or high water. And Chris has agreed to help out. And so in the midst of all of this, Chris has had communications with Des. And when we look back at the songs Don't Forget and Raise Your Bats, those songs are messages from Des to Chris. Because if you think about it this way, for the very first song, when the light is running low and the shadows start to grow, and the places that you know seem like fantasy, there's how does the rest lines go? Oh crud! My silly brain just suddenly had this dumb brain fart. Don't forget lyrics. All right. There's a light inside your soul that's still shining in the cold with the truth, the promise in our hearts. Don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. If you consider that that's from Des, it changes everything. I thought that this song could either be a song to us as the player because of the journey that we're going through with Chris. Maybe it's a song from the player to Chris, or maybe more appropriately, it was a song from Susie to Chris because of the adventure that they're going on together as friends. This song makes suddenly way more sense when it's told by Des, kind of promising Chris what's going to happen. And when the light is running low and the shadows start to grow, so the darkness is coming, Chris, and the places that you, Chris, know seem like fantasy, you're going to go on this journey. You're going to go to dark worlds. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be confusing to you, Chris. Just know this: there's a light inside your soul because of the trip, because of the agreement that you've made, that's still shining in the cold with the truth, the promise in our hearts, you and me, Chris. And don't forget, I'm with you in the dark. As we can see a sense of camaraderie between Chris and the Knight seems to indicate that they're in cahoots with each other. Everything in Chapter 3 at the end seems to indicate that Chris is definitely in on what's going on. Chapter 4 definitely lays it on pretty thick a couple of times. And so it would not surprise me at all if that song is from Des to Chris. Then follow it up with Raise Your Bat. Raise Your Bat basically calls us out as the player, as the demon, and how. Let's just pull this on up so that way I'm not just stumbling over my words right here. Raise your bats. Okay, raise up your bat. So, when the demon heart is crying, and the blood is gushing bright, raise up your bat for the burning fight. When your hope is slowly dying and your future's lost its rights, raise up your bat and face the fright. Let's knock 'em dead into the night. And so already right there, again, when you think about from again, if this is Des communicating to Chris, so when the demon heart is crying, so it's the player, and the blood is gushing bright, raise up your bat for the burning fight. It's all like, come on, Chris, don't let me down. You're going to keep on fighting, even no matter what the player or anything else, whatever the situation is, you're going to keep on fighting. And when your hope is slowly dying, and when your future's lost its rights, when you feel like you're not in control, you keep on fighting, Chris. You're going to raise your bat and you're going to face the fright. You're going to continue pushing forward because you can defy fate, which would seem to indicate that the Roaring Knight is not as free-willed as we might think. And there was an excellent post that I copied from someone the other day that said that the Knight is the one optional boss that does not have the freedom leitmotif somewhere in the music, kind of indicating that the Knight has no freedom. And so Des is being controlled. It's like, hey, even if I lose all of my freedom, Chris, you can keep on going, and you gotta pull through. So this is where we kind of get even more of Des. Come follow me into the dark with your heart as the ark. Makes total sense. Go into the dark worlds. The heart is the ark of power. It's us, which shall shine you the way because I'm with you in the dark. With your heart as my mark, which shall guide you the way through the waves. Come follow me into the dark. With your heart as the ark, which shall shine you the way because I'm with you in the dark. With your heart as my mark, which shall guide you the way through the waves. So there we have. It's like, what's going to guide Chris through all of this? It's the search for Des. Chris has made an agreement that is going to lead. That as far as Chris is concerned, is supposed to lead Chris back to getting Des. That was the agreement that was made. That was the promise that's been made between them, Carol, and whoever else. But, and this comes back around to something that Arts pointed out earlier, that Susie might have been an accident in all of this. I agree. I don't think that Susie was ever meant to get involved in this venture to save Des, to bring about whatever sacrifices and rituals need to be done in exchange for getting Des back. finding my words right there. There's definitely a conspiracy going on there. Susie was not meant to be a part of this. The prophecy said that she would be. And she is following through with it to a certain degree, but also challenging fate at the same time, which I think is important for Chris, because in all of this, I think that Chris didn't expect to be so controlled by the player. Their free will has definitely been taken from them, which is a huge issue. And they wanted to follow through and save Des. Excuse me. And this is not exactly what they signed up for. So you can then understand the frustration that Chris is going through in chapters 1 and 2. But that all changes as they become friends with Susie, which is something that was hinted at in chapter 1 that Chris had always wanted. And now with Susie defying fate, and with Chris also defying the player and kind of going against the plan a little bit, things are changing. And now then, this also ties into the whole thing of how no one has free will, how our choices don't matter. I think that no matter what was chosen by Susie or by Chris, whatever route you choose, it will still lead to Angel's Heaven no matter what. And we'll just have to see where we go from there. But I think that ultimately, in exchange for rescuing Des, I think that Chris and Carol are either willingly or unwittingly bringing about Angel's Heaven, and that the music that we've been getting is Des speaking to Chris, not to us, but to Chris. So that's my current built-in theory right there. Let's see what Art says. It sounds like a song to make Chris feel better when they are in rough times. I agree. Art says, I think the agreement was sometime after the incident. During or after they went to therapy, Carol came to see Chris, and after some talking, they agreed to work together to get Des back. Des singing it to Chris makes the most sense to me. It's a promise to Chris that they're going to get through whatever is coming down the pike. Yeah, I agree with you right there. Shade says, okay, yeah, ripping out their heart and still being functioning in the same community. Think they are a zombie and then dead and or something caster, because now this makes sense. The soul. And in the phone conversation, a person talk about no soul, no dark world, something suspicious happening. Well, in terms of the phone conversation, I think that the phone conversation was ultimately Carol being all like, wait, whatever's going on right here, this is not according to plan. This is not according to plan. Chris, make sure that you've got the player's soul with you, and you're going to follow through with what we got to do because we need our sacrifices. Granted, we're missing a large part of the conversation, but that's kind of what, in my eyes, would make the most sense with what we do know thus far in the story. And that teacup ride was a real... Shay says, I think we need to move our glasses. I don't think they are the good guys. I mean, we police sacrifice. I do not make sense. The knight is her, makes sense more as her father. So thinking about Rudy being the knight, I've seen people speculate that. And you could kind of claim, well, we don't see him because he's in the hospital. And why wouldn't he also be in on the conspiracy? Here's what I'm going to say. Here's what I'm going to say to everyone right here. Rudy is not the knight. Rudy is in on it, though. He is. There is a conspiracy in Hometown. And this is one of the things I want to... This is why I'm holding off on throwing out that my theory right here, as a dedicated video just yet is because I firmly believe that there's more people involved with this conspiracy than we currently know. In chapter 4, when you talk to people in church about the bunker, everyone's all like, "We're not going to talk about that." And it's like, why? Like, okay, it's very suspicious. Why are you all scared of the shelter? What's in the bunker that's got you all so frightened? Maybe they don't know what's in there, but maybe they've been told to stay back from it. Possibly by the mayor. And it's something where when you look at it, you're like, you can't pull this off without other people helping you. Officer Undyne disappearing is not something that you can just say, "Oh yeah, fine, she'll be disappeared for a couple of days and no one's going to notice." Of course everyone's going to notice. How are you going to cover that up? How are you going to assuage people's bad feelings? Well, someone's got to be in on it. And the thing is that Asgore has got an evidence board in his basement over at the flower shop. And he is accepting just not necessarily cruelty from Carol, but demeaning chores from Carol. Why is he doing it? He's doing it to get evidence. And I think that Asgore realizes that there's other people in town who might be in on whatever's going on. Is Father Alvin involved? I think Father Alvin might actually know something. Is he involved with kidnapping people and sacrificing them? I don't think so. But I think Father Alvin knows way more than he's letting on. Why else dig up his father's hammer? This is really morbid. I think he does know to a degree what's going on and is trying to get ready for it. But how would he know what's going on? Oh, wait. Who went to confession? Even though their church doesn't believe in confessions. Azrael. What if Azrael was also in on it? Azrael, Chris, Carol, Rudy. But why then would Rudy not be the knight? My reasoning for it, and I've seen someone do the whole thing of evidence like, oh, it's either Carol or Rudy, because the knight's not really left-handed. No, the knight is left-handed. Watched all the fights. The knight is ambidextrous. But here's the thing. Even like if you're left-handed, that doesn't mean you can't use your right hand. In fact, actually, many lefties that I know also know how to use their right hand to a certain extent. They've tried to be ambidextrous in order to handle more challenges. It would not surprise me if that's the way that Des is. Rudy's got some secrets. And I don't think it's that we're going to have to fight against Rudy, but I think it's more like we're going to have to get Rudy to literally cough up what he knows. And he's worried. Here's the thing. He's worried about what's going to happen to Noelle if he's not at home. If he's the knight and helping to get Noelle into all of this, why would he be concerned about what's happening to her when she's home alone? That doesn't fit. That fit more if it's the knight. If Des is the knight, and remember, the knight has no freedom. Is completely controlled. So, some food for thought right there. Again, I need to play through the chapters again and be paying a little bit more attention in order to get as much of this information. But I really do feel like this is a much larger conspiracy. That Rudy plays a part. Carol definitely plays a part. Chris is definitely playing a part. Even Azrael most likely plays a part. And that could even be one of those things where Chris is just feeling like, think about it right here. That Chris is anticipating Azrael coming back but we know that the sacrifice, the ritual, is meant to go down around the same time that Azrael returns home, and that Toriel was being targeted. Could this be why Azrael ultimately coughed up some information potentially to Father Alvin? And maybe is that one of the reasons why Azrael went to college? Not because it's expected of him, because he wanted to go out into the real wide world. Maybe he was trying to escape what was going on. And why he's coming back home now is to stop the ritual. Something to consider. Art says, I know everyone wants cool guy Rudy to be the knight, but narratively speaking, it don't make sense. I agree. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Shade says, I mean, in the real world, people keep their family ashes inside their home is not weird. Yes, Shade, but how many people dig up their long dead relatives to then burn them and then keep their ashes? Let's see. Art says maybe Carol told him that Gerson could be brought back if he dug up the hammer. I could see that. If they're planning on bringing back Des, it could be like, hey, we're going to change the world right here. We could alter things. Which is something that, again, when people like Gaster can't be in the game, who can offer reality-bending technology and insight? It's Gaster. Art says the convo with two color texts coming out of the phone, white Carol and red Des. She had red damaged numbers. Damaged numbers were like a party member damaged numbers. When you see the knight damaged Tenna for 5,500 damage, which indicates the knight could be a party member down the line. I could see that. That would be so twisted and fun in so many ways to have the knight as a member of the party for certain things that you got to do. But yeah, so that right there, that's one of my burgeoning theories for Deltarune, and I think I'll end it here with a little bit of shipping nonsense. So coming around to Azrael and Des. What I think, this is what I think. Now then, we got we know that Azrael asked out Caddy for the middle school dance. I thought it was for the high school dance, but we now learn it was for the middle school dance. So here is here's kind of my little quick my little quick shipping theory to round things off for the night. I think that Azrael wanted to ask out Des to the dance, but didn't. But didn't because he felt extraordinarily self-conscious asking out the girl that he's got a crush on. I mean, lots of us dudes have been there. Let's just be honest. And as far as like the incident with the whole punch bowl and everything, I think that was just Caddy being funny and being weird. But what I would argue is that after that whole dance experience, that Azrael probably slipped on out and met up with Des. Do I have any in-game evidence for this? Nah, not really. None at all. But the reason why I kind of have this little theory about Azrael like wanting to ask out Des, but then getting cold feet and then slipping away and everything else with her. So on the beach of the lake, you can sit there with Susie. You can enjoy the waves. You can even hear some music in the distance, maybe from Des. And you see that worn spot. Means that someone's been sitting there. And I think I think that Azrael would go and hang out on the beach with Des. Oh boy, spicy stuff. Really, why would I say that? I think that with everything that Toby's been playing around with, there's a lot of small town story tropes that Toby's been having fun with. The fair. Oh, because all little country towns have got to have a fair. There's the fair. There's the church. Everyone knows everyone. The good church family with the black sheep. The kid, the girl next door. Which, if you guys haven't seen my video about the girl next door, go check it on out. Why Susie is ultimately the girl next door. It's not Noelle. But yeah, I looking at so many things that Toby's already been playing around with in terms of small town tropes. The one of the big ones is the good church going kid, either guy or gal, gets together with the rebel rouser, and we know that Des was a rebel rouser, and we know that Azrael was not. Yet Azrael asked out Caddy. Interesting. Why would he have done that? Probably wanted to ask out someone else. Got cold feet. It still went with the kind of person they actually went with the type of personality that he felt drawn to. Yet he did not date Caddy. And that's probably because he was interested in someone else. So that is that is me pulling together wires that, again, there's no real evidence for. It's just pure speculation, but by golly, I love it. Plagueis Screens is here. Hello, everyone. How are you doing today? Well, I'm doing well, and I hope you're doing well. And you are, do say you're doing well. Fantastic. Shade says, Church Boy and Emo Girl are one of the greatest love tropes. You are a classic man, a man of culture. Exactly. And I believe that Toby is a man of culture as well. Arts, you should be more like Good Boy Burgley, Lady Gerson. I am happy that we got to meet her. And as funny as it was to speculate that she might be the knight, I am glad she's not the knight. That she's just a cranky old church lady. Boy, I'm happy with that. All right. Well, everyone, we've been going on for nearly 3 hours now. I think that's good and long enough. We've gone over battles. I've shared with you guys some of my growing theories. I definitely need to play through the games, through the chapters again to get all the evidence I need to either disprove or support these theories and more. And yes, I'll be diving again into the deep waters of shipping. We will be getting there. But I got to get back to other projects. I got to do a little bit of writing tonight, and also then get started on the recordings for the Amazing Digital Circus episode 5, and also for another video that I hope to reveal to you guys pretty soon. Actually, I also got to get to work on another video for the 4th of July. Oh boy. Yeah, there's so much going on. Also, we will not be doing a live stream next Friday because it'll be the 4th of July. I am going to be watching fireworks and hanging out with family. So I will let you guys know when I intend to do the next live stream. I can't tell if it will be Thursday. It might be Thursday, or might even do it earlier on Wednesday, all depending on Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, it's if I don't have free time. What's free time? Wait, what? All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight, for all of your thoughts, your comments, your speculations, your insights, and everything. You guys have been great. Thank you so much for being here, as always. You guys are great. You guys are the reason why me and everyone else here at Camille's Harem feel like we can do this. It's that way we're not just pontificating and screaming into the void that is the internet. So I will see you guys soon in the next video. And until then, you guys take care and choose.